IB Nation, welcome back to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. That dude right there is Ryan Roberts. I'm Brian Driscoll, and we have a lot to talk about today. We were initially just going to kind of preview UNLV, but Coach Marcus Freeman had his press conference at noon, and there's some injury updates that we want to discuss about this game that we will dive into, but also there's some comments he made, Ryan, to me that coupled with comments that were made by Al Golden and Tommy Rees give me a glimmer of hope that Coach Freeman is going to do what we hoped that he would do, which is step in and say, this isn't good enough. This is what we're going to do, and let's rock and roll. So if that manifests on Saturday, I'm going to be very excited and very happy and pleased and feel like this team is going to have a chance to finally get rolling. So we'll dive into that as well. But the first news is going to be injury news. And then, of course, after this, we'll talk specifically about UNLV. Look, this is a team that Notre Dame should handle comfortably. They just got blown out in back-to-back games by San Jose State and Air Force, but so was Stanford and so was Marshall. So it's just going to be about which Notre Dame team shows up. But this is a team that's got some talent, and we're going to talk about what the job Marcus Arroyo is doing. We really like it. Ryan and I have talked about it all week. He's doing a really nice job with this football team, so we'll dive into that. But first, let's dive into the injury news, Ryan. The big news was the announcement that Eli Raridon is out for the season after in a non-contact drill. He retore the same ACL he tore in December. That's a bad, really big blow for him, bad blow for him. You never want to tear the same ACL twice. We don't know what that means for his future. Can he heal 100% or not? We don't know. We're not going to speculate. It's not a good thing you want to see. It's also the timing of it, just based on, I'm not trying to give medical advice or medical diagnosis. All I'm saying is last year, Notre Dame had two guys tear their ACLs in October, like mid to late October to November. That was Kane Barong and Avery Davis. And they were not healthy until kind of into fall camp. And then obviously Avery got injured himself again. And I'm save my opinion on that. Keep that one to myself. But it looks like it's an injury that's definitely going to keep him out of the spring if it is a full tear on the ACL, especially with the knee injury that he already had on that same knee. Might slow him down heading into next fall camp. So again, that's just based off what we've seen from in recent years when guys have had injuries around the same time. So certainly a blow. He was their best blocking tight end by far. The good news, and I hate to even call it good news, but like the positive, I guess, in this is that you did get Mitchell Evans back last week. Mitchell Evans is, they were using Eli Raridon in the same role that they are going to use Mitchell Evans in. So it's at least good that Mitchell Evans is back and healthy because they're similar body types, similar skill sets as far as from a blocking standpoint. And of course, Mitchell is a weapon in the pass game if you use him in the pass game, which, we'll see. Although, again, I said he did get open on a corner route last week. Quarterback didn't see him and didn't throw it to him. But so at least you have that. Holden Stace is going to see an increased role, according to Marcus Freeman. Then, of course, Kane Barong is practicing and healthy as well. So they should be okay, right? I mean, they're going to be okay. Obviously, Eli Raridon's really talented, and it'd be nice to have all those guys plus Eli Raridon. But the point is that this is a position where you're really deep and you can sustain losing a really talented player like Eli Raridon. You don't ever want to see it. And I'm not trying to be flippant or dismissive of his injury because it's disappointing. It stinks for him. It's a blow for the team. I was hoping that he was going to start becoming more of a factor in the offense, to be honest with you. That's obviously not going to happen now. But it is a position, if we're being honest and kind of analyzing this, it is a position where Notre Dame is poised to be okay because of just the great numbers that they have.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great note, man. I mean, from a analyst perspective, right? Like, it's not a backbreaker if you're Notre Dame, right? Like, you can get through this. I mean, you mentioned Mitchell Evans coming back. We mentioned Holden Stace, Kane Barong getting healthier. Like, Notre Dame has good depth at tight end. So that's not going to be a huge hurt as far as, just the overall depth of the group, because they still had good depth outside of having Eli as the potential tight end 2, tight end 3, depending on how he was going to be utilized. But the biggest thing, like you said, Brian, is it's very unfortunate for Eli. A kid that fought back from an injury to start getting increased playing time and playing well in the role that he was asked to play for Notre Dame. It's very unfortunate. especially, again, I'm not going to play doctor either, but usually you see ACL tears. It's usually the other knee because of some overcompensation, stuff like that. Usually when you have back-to-back on the same knee, that's not a great sign. It's not. So hopefully he gets back healthy. Hopefully he gets back in a decent amount of a time frame where he can, get back on the field and be able to start to get that rehab process started here soon. So hoping for the best for Eli. It's just very disappointing, obviously already coming back from the injury. And he was, to your point, he was playing really well in the role that he was asked to be played so far this year.
So Ryan, obviously he also talked about a couple other injury situations. Jason Adamiola is another big one. And he said that Jason is day-to-day with a rib contusion. I think the danger there is, he said it'll be kind of a game time decision. The concern there is if you have a kid who, like it's a bruise, right? And that's a bruise, but it's in your ribs and it's hard. It can be hard to breathe. It can be hard to move when that kind of injury is happening. And so obviously that's a concern, but also you don't want the risk of, like, there's no risk of further damage. Like, there's not going to become cartilage damage or bone damage because you play on the bruise. But what you can do is you can re-injure it, and then all of a sudden going into playing Syracuse next week, he's still having those same issues. Me personally, I wouldn't play him. That's just me. I think this is the kind of game where it'd be good to get Gabriel Rubio some snaps. It's a good game to get Jason Onye some snaps. It's a game where you can, get those other guys some snaps and work them in, maybe work Riley Mills a little bit inside, work on that package for you, maybe get Alexander Ahrensberger some snaps. It's like we said about Marshall, right? If you can't beat Marshall without Jarrett Patterson, then you got bigger problems. Well, they had bigger problems because they lost to Marshall with Jarrett Patterson, and I still felt he got rushed back a week too soon. I feel the same way. I want to make sure that they don't do that with Jason Onye, because if you can't beat UNLV without Jason Onye, then you've got much bigger problems than Jason Onye having bruised ribs. So, but at the same time, if it's healed by Saturday, play him. Right. Sure. My whole thing is if there's still a bruise and still pain and there's still issues there, then I would sit him. That's just my 2 cents. And then if you do play him, get him out as soon as possible. If you jump on him early, just, take him out and have him ready to go in case you need him. But he's day-to-day. He said Jaden Mickey is questionable. So, I don't know. I don't know the specific injury there. He didn't mention it today. I think it was a lower body is what I thought I read. So, he looks like he's a little bit shaken up. They do expect Tariq Bracy back this week. They expect Tariq Bracy back this week. And we do expect Howard Cross to be able to play as well. And that's what makes this really tricky, is with Cross a little banged up, with Jacob Lacey quitting the team, Aiden Keanaaana's already hurt. He got hurt in the spring. It may be a little harder to maybe sit Jason Adamiola. But I do think this is a game where you take that chance and, maybe you suit him up. And if he's ready to go, if you need him, you play him. But ideally, if you can get by without playing him, I think that's an ideal scenario, Ryan.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned maybe playing Riley a little bit inside, right? Like maybe to sit Jason Adamiola and use a couple different packages might be a good idea. Because, Brian, as we get into the UNLV conversation, one, I agree with you in a vacuum, right? Like you shouldn't need Jason Adamiola to beat UNLV. Unfortunately, we can't really fully go there, right? Because it's kind of haunted us already this year. But the one interesting thing I'm looking forward to seeing is, do you run a little more nickel than you have? They've run a lot of nickel regardless, but with Tariq Bracy potentially coming back for this week, do you let Riley Mills play a little more inside and maybe just play Justin Adamiola a ton more? Maybe even put him at big ends during this game, a lot of instances, because Notre Dame is going to go against a spread team in UNLV. So they may be able to, parse a little athleticism for the size that they would lose from a Jason Adamiola and kind of utilize it a little bit differently. Call it a NASCAR package, call it a nickel, call it, sometimes we're going to run some dime in these certain instances. You're going against a spread team, though. This might not be the worst time to kind of format with a few different things, right? Like getting some guys in different spots. You mentioned Alexander Ahrensberger, like maybe he works a little bit inside at points or at strong side end, and then you move Riley Mills inside. Like this might be the week to experiment a little bit with what your front looks, because this is a team that you can probably do that to get a little more speed on the field.
The nickel situation is interesting, obviously, because you have Tariq Bracy coming off of an injury, but maybe you can work a little bit more on that 3 safety nickel that we saw last week early against Stanford. I think that might actually be a good look to have against UNLV. who is a pretty balanced football team. They want to run it. They want to throw it. They're a balanced football team. So, this might be a good week for that. This might be a good week for being in situations where you want to work maybe on your 3 linebacker alignments with Jack Kaiser and a true rover. That might not be a bad look this weekend at times when they're, against certain personnel looks that UNLV is going to show. So I think that there's different things that, like you said, Ryan, that they can and should be able to work on this week that should help them be able to find some success as they get ready for UNLV.
Yep. It's I don't want to call it an experimentation week, but this is a week where you can try a few different things and see what sticks. Because, I mean, God forbid something happens down the stretch where when you're against a Clemson or a USC or one of the better teams left on the schedule and Jason Adamiola is limited or is not able to play, like you have to have a plan B, right? Again, we always talk about how coaches are judged upon the adjustments that they make. And this could allow for them to explore a couple adjustments down the course of the season, hopefully.
So the next thing that we want to discuss is the comments made by Marcus Freeman today during the press conference. And I thought those were very, very fascinating because, we heard some comments from Tommy Reese about kind of owning the issues that have been going on with the football team. We heard comments from Al Golden talking about, maybe we are, maybe we can simplify things a little bit. And, we kind of briefed this, discussed a little bit on the show yesterday, like, well, hey, is this really kind of, something that Coach Freeman handled? Sean and I had the conversation yesterday saying, look, there's a lot going on in the program right now, and a lot of it's not good. And that tends to happen when you're losing, right? When you're losing, people get a little bit more upset about not playing or how they're treated or, other type of things when things aren't going well. And there's certain people that aren't necessarily living up to the standard that I think Marcus Freeman wants to have, based on how he coached and how you treat young people. Not everyone is living up to that standard, and that only gets intensified when you're not winning. But we also said this is a great opportunity for Marcus Freeman to really put his blueprint on this football program by going in there and saying, nope, this isn't how we're going to be. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And make sure that everybody's going forward in the same direction. And then he came out today, Ryan, and he said 2 things about today. And the first one was, which I was happy to hear, was talking about simplifying, right? I mean, it was, look, we've got to simplify what we're doing and simplify the game plan. And I'm like, amen, right? Now, some other things I'd like to see him do, but I don't think you should, like you and I talked about more diversity in the run game, inside out mix. There's no way in the world Marcus Freeman should, if they were going to do that, there's no way in the world he should say that in a press conference. Like, just hand him your game plan. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm just saying, like, that's stuff that, our eyes are open for on Saturday. But the simplifying the game plan thing I thought was important. And then the other part of that comment was, he said, reducing the number of options. And this is a tweet from Chuck Freebie that I'm just reading kind of what Chuck said, because I don't have the direct quote that he said because I didn't write it down. But he said, reducing the number of options and reads that players need to make on each play. And I'm like, hallelujah.
Yes.
Right? Hallelujah. Let these kids play fast and do it against UNLV and then stick with it, right? And you can adjust your game plan each week, and you don't have to run the same game plan week after week after week. That's not simplification. That's not what we're talking about. It's like, look, when you make a call, this is his job. Not he can do this, this, or this based on this, or this, right? Just let these kids play fast, right? Turn them loose. So that was a positive sign. And then I loved the fact that what he said about Drew Pine. He came out talking about Drew and just talked about how he reassured Drew about, you're our guy, you can be a good player, how he's hard on him. And I'm like, that's the kind of follow-up you want to have to when you were critical of him on Monday, which again, yep. I'm okay with what he said about Drew Pine. All our issue was, why didn't he also say that about his coordinators, right? Especially his offensive coordinator. That's a different story that we already addressed. But then, tear him down, right? Let them know this isn't good enough. This isn't up to the standard, but then build them back up. And yep. I think that's an important thing that he talked about. And he said Drew came out, had a great week of practice and all that. So I was very pleased with that dichotomy of, this is what you say on a Monday after a loss, and this is what you say on a Thursday. He's our guy. We told him, don't be so hard on yourself. You're our guy. Don't listen to all the noise. Go out there and do what we know you're capable of doing. And I think that's a positive. And I won't be surprised, as long as the game plan is correct, I won't be surprised if Drew comes out on Saturday and looks like the guy we saw, against North Carolina and to a degree against BYU.
I mean, Brian, it was really nice to hear all these comments when you kind of look at it just in a vacuum, right? Because, I mean, you wrote an article a couple days ago about Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame being at a crossroads of sorts, right? And it's something right now where if there is a identity that is going to be established on this program that you hoped was already being established, but if there is a fix or a new layer to this vision that Marcus Freeman has, it needs to be right now, man. It has to be, because when adversity hits, we are judged about how we come out of the other side, right? And right now, Marcus Freeman has a big opportunity to show that he understands that there's growth that needs to happen, not only from his players, not only from his assistants, but from himself also, right? So I think that the fact that he is open to simplifying is a big thing, right? Because we've talked about it a lot. There's a lot of guys out of position because there's just too much thinking happening, man. And that's making people kind of think, oh man, Notre Dame lacks talent. No, it's not a lack of talent. There's a confusion in what they are being asked to do. And if there is a simplification that's going to happen, I am very much looking forward to exactly how it looks like, first and foremost. But I'm happy just the fact that Coach Freeman understands this needs to happen, right? Like, that's the self-awareness that we talk about as a professional. He needs to have in himself. I mean, he is the leader of a program. So to be the leader of a program, you need to self-evaluate yourself all the time and say, am I pushing the right buttons? Am I doing the right things? Is this path the right way for everyone that I am leading? So I think it's a great step. We have to see, obviously, what it looks like and what it's going to tangibly look like this week and moving forward. But I think that it was great signs. And we've talked about it a lot, right? Like, Drew Pine can take the hard criticism, right? Like, he can take that tough coaching, but it's also nice just from a leader perspective that after he did tear him down a little bit, that he comes back to Drew and just gives him some reassurance, man. Because no matter how hard you can be coached, because I know I was a guy that can be coached pretty hard too. Reassurance is still a pretty nice thing, man. Like, it's still a big thing, right? Like, it's a big thing to have someone in your ear occasionally saying, like, you're doing a great job, man. I believe in you, right? Like, those things matter. So a lot of great signs, I think, from Coach Freeman, at least from what we're hearing. Now's the next step. What does it look like in Saturday? Does it change? What looks different specifically? Those things are what we don't know yet. But I do think it was a great sign. After having some puzzling comments and some comments that get you a little worried, I think that this press conference did go a long way to saying, hey, there might be some growth that is happening internally here with this program and with Coach Freeman.
Right. Now it's about, okay, now go take it out on the field on Saturday. That's going to be the key, obviously. And you know, and it was, I mean, it's just words right now, but it was a different tone, he wasn't just repeating stuff he says all the time, which is what I was happy to hear. So that was definitely a positive coming out of the press conference, Ryan, for sure. So those are aspects of it. Obviously, I'm curious to see how the offense adjusts to not having Eli Raridan. Do they just keep doing the same thing and plug and play? That's going to be something we're going to see. Do they make adjustments from a personnel standpoint, alignment standpoint? All those are questions that we'll have, and we'll dive more into that tomorrow. When we do our predictions, we'll do keys to victory tomorrow. Then we'll do our UNLV prediction, and then we'll talk about some of the big games this weekend. It's not as great of a weekend, at least on paper, as it was last weekend, but still some really good games this weekend that we'll dive into tomorrow. So, Ryan, what I want to do next is I want to talk about the UNLV Running Rebels. And this is a football team that is 4-3. And they had a very close loss to Cal at the beginning of the year. So that was the first time that we got a chance to watch UNLV play. Ryan and I got the chance to break down their film was when they played Cal. Cal beat them 20-14. This is a program that's been struggling for a while, Ryan, and it's been kind of interesting. There was a couple hires they made that I thought would really work. I thought, when they hired Tony Sanchez from Bishop Gorman, I thought, hey, he's going to at least recruit well. And They went between 3-9 and 5-7 in his 5 years, 4-8, 3 different seasons. When they hired Bobby Houck away from Montana, I thought that was going to be a great hire. He did great things at Montana. He struggled. He was there 5 years. He won 2 games in 4 of his 5 years. In year 4, it looked like they were progressing. They went 7-6, and then bam, right back down to 2-11 in his final year. And he got fired, and then Sanchez replaced him. So when you look at it, Ryan, they went through a stretch of, and of course, the coach before that was a name that a lot of Notre Dame fans will remember, is Mike Sanford Sr., who was a former Notre Dame assistant, and he had his issues as well. So in 2005, so you look at it from 2005, Mike Sanford was there for 5 years. and he had 3 2-win seasons and 2 5-win seasons. He was replaced by Bobby Houck, who was there 5 years. He had 4 2-win seasons and 1 7-win season. So what is that, Ryan? That's 7 2-win seasons so far, right? Yes. Then Tony Sanchez replaced them. He was actually better. He had no 2-win seasons. He didn't have the one good season. He was between 3 wins and 5 wins. He had 3 years of 4 wins. Marcus Arroyo in his first year was the COVID year. They went 0-6. In his second season last year, they went 2-10. And one thing that you and I talked about, I think it was you and I, it might have been me and Vince during the offseason, was if you look at their 2-10 record, it was a little misleading. Now, again, you are what your record says you are, but it wasn't like past seasons. They lost in overtime to Eastern Washington, who was a really good FCS team. Then they lost back-to-back games to Arizona State and Iowa State. Then they lost to Fresno by only 8 points. Fresno was a real good football team. I remember watching that game last year, Ryan, and UNLV gave Fresno everything that they could handle in that game last year. Then they lose the next week to Texas San Antonio by a touchdown. Texas San Antonio was a really good football team last year. Didn't they win Didn't they win like 11, 12
Something
games
like
last year? And with 12-2 last year. UNLV lost to them by a touchdown. Then they played Utah State. Again, another really good football team last year. Utah State was an 11-win team last year. They lost by 4 points. Then they lost to San Jose State by 7 points. Then they got blown out by Nevada. They beat New Mexico and Hawaii. They lost to a ranked San Diego State team by 8 points. They had a lot of games where they were really competitive. This year, they're kind of turning that around. And some of those games that they were losing, they're now winning. For example, they were losing to New Mexico at halftime, rallied back and got the W. So they're not a finished product by any stretch, but he's only – and this is really, to me, only his second year for me. I mean, any coach that was hired during the COVID year gets a pass on that year because you couldn't practice. You couldn't go on the road recruiting. You couldn't establish your program. His first year to me was 2021. They were 2-10, but a competitive 2-10. This year they've come around and turned the corner, and they're 4-3. And their schedule sets up, Ryan, to me, with an opportunity. I mean, this game, hopefully Notre Dame can win this game, but they've got some opportunities down the stretch to be a bowl team this year. You've got at San Diego State, who's, I mean, that won't be an easy win by any stretch, but they're struggling. They're 3-3. They recently beat Hawaii. They do have a nice win over Toledo, but they've got blown out by Boise, blown out by Utah, blown out by Arizona. They're struggling a little bit. You got Fresno, who's struggling without Jake Haener. Hawaii is really bad. I mean, they're really bad. So you've got Fresno, who's 2-4, although they're coming off a big upset win over San Jose State. I still can't believe they won that game. Hawaii's 2-5. Their wins are over Duquesne, a FCS team, and Nevada, who's really not good. And then their last game is against Nevada, who's 2-5 also. So there's a great opportunity here for Coach Arroyo and his football team to really show something. And, if they can play Notre Dame tough, and again, we're looking at this from UNLV standpoint, if they can play Notre Dame tough, you say, look, we played Cal and we played them down to the wire. We went to Notre Dame. Yeah, they beat us, but, we were competitive. And then you can go out and maybe win, 3 of their last 4 games or 4 of their, 2, even if they go 2-2 down the stretch, they're 6-6 and in a bowl game. But if they can't, they can maybe go 3-1. All of a sudden you're 7-5. Since 2005, they've had one season where they had a winning record. And that was in Bobby Houck's tenure, who was like 2 coaches ago, right? A lot of 2-win seasons. If you can go show, hey, look, we're here, that could be huge for them, because in this era of the transfer portal, if you're a team like San Jose State or UNLV or Marshall, you want to establish yourself as the program to go to if you're leaving another big-time program. Hey, you're not happy at USC. Like San Jose State has Chase Williams. Remember him? He was a big-time recruit, played a lot at USC. I think did he get kicked out of school or did he just transfer? I can't remember.
Not sure.
But he's at San Jose State playing now. You see Ricky White, who's a transfer from Michigan State, who's playing at UNLV. So this is a big season for Coach Arroyo, because if he can establish himself as, hey, we know how to coach, our kids play hard, which they do, Ryan. I mean, you and I were talking about this even in the San Jose State game. Jacob Brumfield, or Doug, I won't say Jacob Brumfield. Doug Brumfield gets knocked out of the game early, and yet they kept battling. They played hard. They got blown out, but they never quit, I didn't think. I thought they played hard really for 4 quarters. I thought that was impressive to me. That showed me a little something about the job he's doing there. But then also, they've won some other tough, hard-fought games. So I like the job he's doing. If they can have a strong finish this season, they can make themselves as one of the destination programs for kids who are looking to leave and go to a smaller school and have a chance to play. And this is the perfect time for him to have this kind of year. Because look, you're not going to build it through high school recruiting, right? I mean, that's to a certain degree that's there, but if you really want to ascend as a program like UNLV, you're going to need transfers.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the kind of year where you can establish that. And so I like what they're doing right now, Ryan.
Oh no, I really like what Arroyo's doing. I mean, to your point, they have one winning season, and that was a 7-6 record in the last 17 years, right? I mean, that's the proof, right? Like, I mean, Marcus Arroyo walked into a really tough situation, and it's Brian. This is the best UNLV team I've seen in probably my lifetime. If I'm being honest, like I can't remember a team. I'm sure there was probably a team in like the 90s that was a lot better than, and I didn't remember them at that point. But this is a talented team, and to your point, like. They play in Nevada, right? They play in Las Vegas. Like, I have to think that is attractive to some people that want to kind of come there as a second chance opportunity, or even on the high school route. Like, I would think that would be a little bit of an attractive destination. So I think they have a chance to become kind of an ascending team, right? Like, they should not be competitive against Notre Dame, but what they have a chance to is show like, hey, we're getting better, man. Like we're on the right track here. And like you said, they got a couple talented kids that are transfers, man. Ricky White from Michigan State. Aiden Robbins was at Louisville originally, the running back, and the quarterback's talented. I know we're going to get into him a little more in depthly, but there's some talent on this UNLV team, man. It's a lot more talented than I think a typical UNLV team has been in recent years.
And that's the thing we're trying to do here is we're not at the point yet where we're talking about the matchup. Right now, we're simply talking about this is who UNLV is. We're just giving you an overview of who UNLV is, and UNLV is doing some really nice things this year. And Marcus Arroyo is doing some nice things. He came from Oregon, obviously. He's got a good track record there. So I like I said, I like the job he's doing. He was at Oregon from 17 to 19 before he took over at UNLV. He was at Oklahoma State in 15 and 16 on some decent offenses. He was with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as a quarterbacks coach the year before that. He was at Cal in 2011 and 12 as a quarterbacks coach. That would have been under Jeff Tedford, so he learned some there. And then he played quarterback at San Jose State. So he's an offensive-minded guy, but they are not what you typically expect from an offensive-minded coach. They're tough, they're physical. The problem is they're just not real talented on defense. That's their problem right now. And they're not really good up front on the offensive side of the ball. But this is a team that's well coached, well schemed, and they battle. And I think that's what makes them dangerous. And they've taken advantage of some transfers, as we talked about as well. So, Ryan, let's begin with just sort of an overview of who UNLV is. Obviously, we talked about what we see from them, big picture, but statistically, they're a decent team. Offense is really their bread and butter this year. They rank second in the Mountain West in scoring offense at 29 points per game. They are third in the conference at 5.7 yards per play on offense. Their rushing numbers are not good. They're only averaging 136 rushing yards per game so far this season, but they've had some good rushing games. They can be dangerous running the football. Yep. But their offense, as we said, their offensive line's not great. But they've had a couple good performances. They ran for a bunch of yards against North Texas, who's not very good. But they struggle to run the football traditionally, although I do like their backs. They've got a couple nice backs. Their offensive line, I said, just struggles. They're third in the conference in passing yards, third in the conference in yards per attempt, third in the conference in yards per completion, and second in the conference in quarterback rating. And that was with Doug Brumfield getting knocked out. He was like 1 of 6 against San Jose State before he got knocked out. And then he missed last week's game against Air Force, which was also a blowout loss. But not having him takes a lot away from that offense. And then they are first in the conference in red zone touchdown percentage. Defensively, different story. 8th in scoring at 27.7 per game. 5th in the conference in yards per game. 6th in yards per play. There are 12 teams in the Mountain West. 6th in rushing yards allowed. 4th in yards per attempt. 7th in passing yards allowed. 11th in yards per attempt allowed. 9th in yards per completion, 12.6. 10th in rating. They are good in third down and red zone, though. They're third in the conference in third down defense and 4th in the conference in red zone touchdown. They're 4th in turnovers lost and 3rd in turnovers gained. They've actually forced 12 turnovers so far this year in 7 games, which isn't bad. So, again, decent football team. a team that you can't just go in and think you're just going to roll. This isn't New Mexico from 2019. I mean, that was a bad Mountain West team. This is a quality Mountain West team and a team you're going to be prepared for and be ready to handle, because they've got some of the things that can give Notre Dame problems. Mainly, they've got a really good quarterback who's a dual threat guy. And I think when you talk about what makes UNLV potentially dangerous for a Notre Dame team who's been so inconsistent, it starts right there with Doug Brumfield, who they do expect back for this game, by the way, after missing most of the last 2 games.
Yeah, I mean, and you talk about that Air Force game, Brian, like that was a lopsided affair, but the big reason was that Doug Brumfield didn't play in that game. Like we've seen him. I mean, the kid up until this point has thrown 8 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions, completed 68% of his passes. He's a run threat. I mean, against North Texas, again, not a great team, but he ran 12 times for 100 yards in that football game, right? So this kid is a 6'5", 225-pound kid, lefty. He's got a really strong arm, man. He's got a whip for an arm, right? Like he creates some easy velocity. He's a good overall athlete. I mean, and I think that he has to manage chaos a little better because he has a lot of practice at it because the offensive line's not great. I like Davion McDaniel at left tackle. I think he's a pretty solid football player, but otherwise the offensive line is just not great. But Doug Brumfield, you can see it, man, whether off of the RPO game, off the screen game, or just working intermediate, crossers. He's got a whip, man. Like the ball comes out pretty fast for what I would call a little bit of a looping motion as well, but live arm, good athlete. He's a dangerous kid, man, because we've seen, to your point, Brian, Notre Dame has struggled at times against guys that can kind of extend things, right? Pick up some first downs with their legs, that type of thing. And I think that Brumfield brings that to the game, and him back for UNLV after dealing with concussion the last week and a half, I think that it's big time for them because he is a extremely talented player. One of the more talented, God-gifted quarterbacks on the schedule for Notre Dame. Is he the best? No, obviously C.J. Stroud and Caleb Williams, and those guys are on the schedule, right? But it was as far as just size, athleticism, arm strength, Doug Brumfield is a very talented kid and a very quality quarterback for his level.
Well, I would say from just a pure God-given talent standpoint, he's definitely in the top 5 of who Notre Dame's going to face this year. And that's impressive when you consider the quarterbacks Notre Dame's going to play this year. This has been a very quarterback-dominant season for Notre Dame. And in top 5, I mean, look, you're talking about C.J. Stroud, who's a potential number 1 overall draft pick. You're talking about Caleb Williams, who some people think might be the number 1 overall draft pick the next year. You've got DJ Uiagalelei, who is a former 5-star player. I just can't roll my tongue like that. I mean, no disrespect to DJ on that one. You've got Phil Dracovic, you've got Tanner McKee, you've got Jaron Hall. I mean, they've played some good. Drake May. You know what I mean? So he's in that. I should say he's in the conversation for top 5. And Garrett Schroeder's played really well for Syracuse so far this year. So they've played some really good quarterbacks so far, and they play some really good quarterbacks down the stretch. And Doug Brumfield is the kind of kid that if you overlook UNLV, he can hurt you. Because the one thing he can do that Marshall's quarterback couldn't do is he can throw it over your head. Because he's got a really nice downfield arm. He can play action you, and if your safeties don't respect it or your corners lose a step, he can throw it over your head like Drake May could, like Tanner McKee could. And so you're going to have to pressure him, because the one thing I'll say about him, Ryan, when you look at Doug Brumfield, he's not the most accurate kid if he gets off like out of his mechanics at all. If he's thrown in rhythm and he's got a clean pocket, he's a really accurate quarterback. When he gets into situations where you can pressure him, I mean, he's a redshirt sophomore. He came into this season with 60 career passes, right? I mean, he was a 43% passer. His last 2 years, he'd thrown 2 touchdowns and 1 pick. So he hadn't played a whole lot of football till this year. Now, he's jumped up to 68% this year, and he's had 3 games over 70% against New Mexico, against North Texas, and against Idaho State. And he was 54.5% against California, who we have said has a good defense. He was struggling against San Jose State before getting knocked out, but he has been a good football player this year, Ryan. I like what this kid can do. But if you can get any kind of pressure on him at all, he will be inaccurate. And that's going to be a big key. You can force him into bad decisions. You can force him into misses. I mean, even as simple as, I'm trying to remember which game it was, but he had just a little outcut, and he got a little bit of pocket pushback, and he tries to throw it out to the flats, and he just throw it's like 3 feet over the kid's head, right? So if you can get him out of rhythm, you can cause him to misses. But if he gets comfortable in the pocket, he can, number one, he can throw it over your head. He can hurt you over the middle. He can make some of those tough NFL type of throws that can give you problems. But he's also a kid that if you don't keep contained, like Tanner McKee wasn't a real mobile quarterback, and they even let him get out of the pocket a couple times. This is the kind of kid you let get out of the pocket, he can hurt you bad. And I think that even more than the big arm, that's the part that concerns me the most if I'm Notre Dame, is letting him turn a 3rd and 9 into a first down because you lose contain and he takes off running. He's one of the more mobile quarterbacks that they're going to face this year. He's got, 5 rushing touchdowns so far this year? Yeah. The reason his rushing numbers don't look better, Ryan, he's got, let me see here, I think it's like 137 rushing yards on 5 carries. And 100 of those yards came in a game over North Texas. He rushed for 100 yards. The reason it's not more than that is UNLV's has given up 20 sacks this year already. And so they give up. So he's lost a lot of yards on sacks as well. But this is a kid that can hurt you with his arm, with his legs, and being a lefty gives you some weird, funky dynamics that, you're not used to. Like all of a sudden the guy's rolling out to his left in the pass. Like, no big deal. Now it's like he can yank one down the field. So he's a kid that presents some problems. And they've got some talent on the perimeter. They got some guys that can beat you in space if you don't tackle well. Ricky White's a good football player. Seneca McKee is a good football player. They've got some weapons. He's got some weapons to throw to as well, Ryan. And that's another thing that makes his team. It makes his teams dangerous. They don't have the big guys like Stanford just had. They're more speed, catch and run type of players, and he'll spread the ball around. I'm looking at this here. They've got 8 different players. I was looking at this today, Ryan. 8 different players have caught at least 10 passes this year.
Nice.
So that's impressive, right? That's impressive. I like seeing that. So Ricky White's a transfer from Michigan State. He's a good football player. Kyle Williams is another kid that is has been very productive for them. He's played a lot of football. He's got over 1,000 career yards. He's a 6-foot guy. Ricky White, 6'1". Like I said, Seneca McKee is a good football player. Nick Williams, Jeff Weimer. Their top five pass catchers are all receivers. And of that group, really, Nick Williams is the only one that has really the kind of size that could be a problematic for you. He's like a 6'5", 6'4", 215, 220-pound kid. Outside of that, most of those guys are 6 foot to 6'2", good players with some decent skill, and they know how to get open. So, and they scheme well too, Ryan. Their run game is very diverse inside out. They'll do a lot of quarterback read. They'll run screens. They'll play action down the field. This is a fun offense to break down. Like, you can see what Coach Arroyo is trying to build there. And if he can get some more weapons, if he can get a better line, I should say, this offense has a chance to be one of the 2 or 3 best in the Mountain. I mean, it's already one of the 2 or 3 best in the Mountain West this year, but it's a bad year for offense in the Mountain West. Like traditional Mountain West, when they had teams that were scoring 38 to 40 points a game, he's got a chance to build that kind of offense if they can just get better line play. And that's really the thing that drags this offense down right now.
Yeah, and they know what they do well, right? From a wide receiver perspective, like they have some space players, man. I mean, you mentioned Kyle Williams. I think he's a good football player, but I mean, Ricky White. I mean, Brian, like, people forget when Ricky White was at Michigan State, he had a game at Michigan State where he had like 8 catches for 197 yards while he was at Michigan State. So like, this kid was a Big Ten caliber football player who just so happens to now be at UNLV. Like, he's a talented kid, man. 6'1", 195 pounds.
It was against Michigan, by the way. It was against Michigan.
I mean, it was a crazy game, man. And I didn't know whatever happened to him. And I'm like, oh, he plays for UNLV. And he's a really good football player now for them. And he does a lot of different things really well. Like, he understands how to manipulate space. He works in the screen game, and a really underrated after catch player for UNLV, man. Like, he's I wouldn't call him like the most dynamic as far as like straight line speed, but he understands space, right? Like, he understands how to get in and out, work in the middle of the field, do all that type of stuff, and just create some yards after the catch. So I really like Ricky White. You mentioned Kyle Williams. There's a few other wide receivers that are talented players. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, again, I just don't want people to underrate like it's UNLV. Like, they have a kid that literally had some impact at Michigan State. So it's not like they don't have kids,
in the Big
right?
Ten. Right.
Exactly.
And again, we're not sitting there saying, oh, Notre Dame's going to lose. If Notre Dame plays their game, this will not be a close game. I mean, they just lost blowout losses to San Jose State and Air Force. And I know Doug Doug Brumfield wasn't in the game, but it's not a 35-point difference, right? This is a game you should win. All we're saying is, as we always do, and some people don't understand this, is we're going to give you an honest assessment of the opposing team and what they're good at in the areas that they're not good at. So offensively, this is a good football team. And I don't know why, but I've always wanted UNLV to be good in football. And I don't quite understand. I mean, maybe it's because as a kid I grew up watching the Running Rebels and basketball, and I just think it'd be cool to have a good football team in Vegas. Maybe that's it. But like I remember when Jason Thomas went there. He was like a big time quarterback. I think he started off at USC or was going to go to USC. Ended up there. Ended up not really talented kid. Ended up not really panning out because his team wasn't very good. And I really thought when Tony Sanchez got there, do you remember how good he was at Bishop Gorman? I mean, he had Bishop Gorman rolling, and he couldn't get the job done, and he had his own struggles.
Sanchez got like a couple of his offensive linemen, I remember, from Bishop Gorman to come over there too. That's what I was actually pretty optimistic with that hire as well, Brian, because I thought that also he could tap into the recruiting base a little bit in Nevada and the surrounding states, but fortunately didn't happen for Coach Sanchez. But
right. So we'll see if Marcus Arroyo can be that guy, and then how long can they keep him here and help him to build that. So that'll be interesting too. My hope is that as a Mountain West guy, he played in the Mountain West. Maybe there's a passion for staying in the conference and building it up. We'll have to find out about that. So where UNLV has struggled, Ryan, when they do struggle this year, is defensively. But there's to me, and I know there's a couple guys that you're going to talk about here, and we'll start off with the D line here in a second, but just structurally, they are a 3-3-5 team defensively, and it's kind of fits their conference. What I like about what they do out of that 3-3-5 is they can easily walk up and have a five guys on the line of scrimmage. They'll do a lot of different things where they'll bring linebackers and sometimes even safeties down into that window. So they're not like just a 3-3-5 stack all game like used to see in the Big 12 a lot. They're a 3-3-5, but I would say they're closer to how Marcus Freeman was at Cincinnati than what the 3-3-5s are the Big 12, in that they can easily get to a 4-down front in their base personnel.
Yep.
And they play a lot of man coverage on the outside, a lot of man coverage. And I think that's an area where they've kind of had their issues, is they can get ripped up in the pass game. But they're schemed relatively well, I think. I actually like what they do schematically defensively. The difference is they just don't have the athletes and the players across the board that they have on offense. But I know there's a couple guys you like, Ryan, starting off with the defensive end.
Yeah, there's two guys I like in the front seven. To your point, Brian, the problem with it is that there's not depth in the front seven. And then I honestly didn't see anybody in the secondary that I thought was anything more than just a okay player in their conference, right? But Adam Plant Jr. is the first guy that really popped to me. Where's number 7 for UNLV? And he reminds me, stylistically talking about, like he reminds me a little bit of what makes Isaiah Foskey so successful when he's playing well, right? Like they're both about 6'5", 260 pounds. He wears number 7 as well. So like that comparison kind of works a little bit, but he's a speed to power kid, right? Like he's not the bendiest guy in the world, but he's got good straight line speed, good explosiveness, and he's got power profile. So if an offensive tackle is a little light in their set, or they're, on their heels a little bit, he can take advantage of you because he has a little bit of power, right? So he's a good football player. He's finally starting to put it together. He's had some production over the last couple of years, but this year he's tackle for loss numbers are up comparative to where it is usually at the season. The sack numbers are a little bit up. So Adam Plant's a good player, and he's a Bishop Gorman kid. So he's one of the kids that stayed in state and has done a good job for UNLV during the course of his career, and a player that's on NFL radars. The other guy is Austin Aliak, I believe is how you pronounce it. He's the linebacker. He is number 27, and Brian, he looks a lot more like a safety to me than a linebacker. He's listed at like 6'2", 220 pounds. I would question if he's actually a legit 220 pounds, but crazy stat for him.
Yes.
He leads the team with 80 tackles on the year and 8 tackles for loss in 7 games. The next closest tackle number, total tackles, is 35 on the year. So he is their leading tackler by 45 tackles.
Not only does he have 8 tackles for loss, Ryan, he has 3 sacks and 2 picks. This kid makes a lot of plays. This kid makes a lot of plays on the football. He's very rangy. You talk about Plant. You've watched more film of them than I have. When I've watched them, he's the kid that's really stood out to me as like, this kid can make plays. Again, he's a Mountain West kid. He's in the conference he should be in, right?
Yep.
But he is a very active, rangy linebacker that just has a nose for the ball. I mean, now like part of his numbers are due to the fact he has more assisted tackles than solo tackles, right? He's got 32 assisted tackle or solo tackles. He's got 48, I believe, total tackles on the season. So that obviously helps. But even then, he's still 12 solo tackles ahead of anybody else. But the assisted tackles tells me that this kid is always around the ball. If he's not the first man in, he's the second man in. The fact he's got 8 tackles for loss, they will shoot him. They will bring him off the edge. They'll shoot him in the gaps. He's very rangy in coverage. You can get up underneath in cuts. If you don't watch yourself, you can think you can throw it over him, and then he'll drop and get up underneath football. So this kid is the one that flashed the most for me. Those two kids more than anybody. And then they had a nose guard, and I couldn't tell his name I didn't even honestly look it up because I couldn't see his number. They have some wacky uniforms that makes it hard to see numbers. And so, but they have this really short, I think it's Darius Johnson, I think is who it is, but this really short, squatty nose tackle that just fires off the ball, man. Like, and he doesn't have any kind of moves. He's just a boom, just attacking gaps. Those are really the only 3 guys for me that flashed. Once you get away from them, there's to me a bit of a drop off in what they have, and I think the secondary is they're actually not terrible in the front 7. They have some good football players in the front 7. It's the secondary where they have some major issues. And when you're a team that plays 5 DBs at a time, it's almost half your lineup. That's been their issue this year.
Yeah, it's not a place you want to be. I mean, to your point, I think there are 2 very quality players in the front 7, but there's just not enough of them, right? Like if you had 2 to 3 Adam Plants and 2 to 3 Aliaks, then you're cooking a little bit, right? Like then you're looking like, oh, well, you might have one of the best defenses in the conference if you're UNLV. But they had those 2, and there just isn't a ton of talent right now in the defensive backfield. Like that's a spot for me if I'm Marcus Arroyo and I'm the recruiting staff at UNLV and the assistant coaches. Like I need to upgrade the secondary moving forward because traditionally it is a down year this year as far as what the offenses look like. You think of like Nevada, obviously lost Jay Norvell. They've been big down this year offensively. Fresno State's been down with the Jake Hayner injury. Usually there's more quality offenses in the Mountain West. This year it's taken a step down, and if you are able to get more talent in the secondary, then you have a chance to run the table a little bit in the Mountain West if you're UNLV, because there's definitely some offensive talent. There's going to be a lot of guys coming back next year that you feel really excited about offensively. And if you start getting it figured out in the secondary, then you start going from a promising ascending team to a good football team, right? Like that's kind of the ascension that you potentially make. But I agree, Brian, there's a couple of nice players defensively, just not enough of them right now for UNLV.
Yeah, there's just too big of a gap. I mean, that's the thing for me. There's just too big of a gap between their top, maybe 3 or 4 kids and then everybody else. And they just don't have the depth of production. Like receiver, I mean, there's 5 kids that can hurt you. If you don't, I mean, they don't have that kind of thing on defense. And so as they hit the transfer portal this offseason, that's position numero uno if I'm Marcus Arroyo on the staff. Like, look, any any defensive back that hits the transfer portal, we're looking at. I mean, we're going to look at. So I like what they're doing. I really do. I like what they're doing, and I hopefully they can finish strong. That's going to be a big key. And you hope that Notre Dame is able to handle business against them, but then you hope they come out of that game, ready to go finish strong against really 4 beatable teams, right? And you just got to win 2 of them to be bowl eligible. And if you can win 3 of them, you really lock yourself into a bowl game, because it's not a given that a 6-6 team makes a bowl game. Although last year we saw a 5-7 team make a bowl game because there weren't enough bowl eligible teams, but it varies year from year.
Don't throw shade at Rutgers like that, all right?
Yeah, I just simply making a statement of fact that a 5-7 team made a bowl game last year. A lot of people say, "Oh, I don't like how many bowls there are." I do, because it's good for teams like that to get that. Because I remember Urban Meyer's first year Bowling Green, was it 01-02? They went 8-3 and didn't make a bowl game.
Crazy.
I mean, if you're a 6-6 MAC team now, you're probably making a bowl game. And I think that's good for those programs and good for those teams. It gives them the extra practice. It lets those kids experience a bowl environment. They get to go to some place. Maybe a lot of them haven't traveled a ton. So I like the fact there's a lot of bowl games. Again, you may not want to watch it. That's fine, whatever. But it's good for the kids. And that, again, this is what college football should be about. It should be player focused and those kind of things? Are we doing things to make their experience better?
Mm-hmm.
And I think having a lot of bowl games does that. And I just wish the network that carried all those bowl games would stop talking down all those bowl games. That'd be nice, right? But that might be asking a little bit too much. So I really do like what Marcus Arroyo is doing. Now, let's talk a little bit about the matchup. Should this be a game that Notre Dame struggles? No, it shouldn't. I'm just being honest. We can respect UNLV and still say, but if Notre Dame plays like they did against Ohio State, if they play like they did against Cal in the second half, against North Carolina, BYU, then no, this should not be a competitive football game. But what we are saying is if they play like they did in the first half against Cal or against Marshall or against Stanford, this is a team that can give you some problems. And it's an interesting game too, Ryan, because to a degree, it's a good get-right type of game for Notre Dame because this isn't New Mexico where you can play bad and still win 66-10, which is, I believe, wasn't that the final score of the New Mexico game in
something like that?
In 2019. See, this is going to bother me now. I think I'm right on that, but let me just go look. 66-14 was the final of that game. And Notre Dame didn't really play that well. At least on offense, they didn't play that well. Because one of the touchdowns, remember, Kyle Hamilton had a pick six on a ball that Dalen Hayes tipped. They had some silly plays. You're like, dude, that doesn't work against anybody that's decent. This is not that. In that same year, they blew out Bowling Green, This is not that. But this is a team that you if you play well, you'll win convincingly, but you've got to you're going to be challenged. So if you do come out and play really well and just light them up, it's a good sign. And if you are able to shut down their offense, it's a good sign because this is a quality offense with some NFL-ish type of players, right? Would you say that's fair, Ryan?
Yes.
So
very fair.
I think that's the kind of get-right game you want to have is, their defense is not very good. They're not real talented on the secondary. You want to see Notre Dame come out and say, okay, let's take it. Two things are true right now. Notre Dame needs to do more to get their receivers more involved in the game, and you're playing a BYU defense with a not very good secondary that plays a lot of man coverage. It's going to give you some looks that should allow you to make some big plays with your wide receivers. So it's a great opportunity there. The question is Notre Dame going to take advantage, or are they just going to come out and run it down their throat and win just because they have better players? That's the concern that you have. Notre Dame can win this game just by coming out and running it down UNLV's throat, and there's not a lot they can do about it. There's just not. I mean, UNLV's rush defense actually has good numbers on the season or decent numbers on the season. The problem is, Ryan, is they've shut down teams that aren't really good at running the football. When they've played anybody with a good ground attack, they've struggled a little bit. They shut down Cal. North Texas ran okay on them, but the last 2 weeks against San Jose State, they gave up 203 yards, and the Air Force ripped them up for 406 yards. So their rush defense isn't terrible, but they're not real big. You can kind of push them around. I don't want Notre Dame to just come out and do that all game and win that way. Yes, run the ball on them. That's who you are. I want to see Notre Dame run for 200-plus yards, but don't just bully them. It's like what we said in other games. Don't just bully them. Come out and build on what you need to build on to get ready for Syracuse and Clemson. So get your receivers involved. Be aggressive. Attack down the field because this is a mindset game for Notre Dame, not just a go get a W. It's got to be a mindset game for Notre Dame where, hey, we've got to restore our confidence. We've got to get, if you're not going to beat Clemson and USC, if you don't get more from Lorenzo Styles and Braden Lindsey, you're just not. And you're not getting a lot from them because of what you're doing than what they're doing. But even with Lorenzo, he just hadn't seemed right mentally. This is a great opportunity to get him going, get Braden Lindsey going, get Tobias Merriweather and Deion Colsey more involved in the game plan. So that way those guys have the experience when you need them against Syracuse, Clemson, BC, USC. They've got that burn under their belt, and they've got their confidence up. And so I think that's important. It doesn't mean you got to throw it 45 times, but you got to do some stuff to say we are looking to get our receivers the ball in this game. I don't care if Michael Mayer can go for 10 catches and 140 yards against UNLV. Don't care. You can beat you know what Michael Mayer can do. This is a game where you've got to do some things schematically to make sure that you get your receivers going. That's a very important part of this game for me, for Notre Dame. And this is the kind of defense that's good for that, in my opinion.
Yeah. Because even the bad teams you've played, Brian, or less talented teams, I shouldn't call them bad teams because they beat Notre Dame, right? So like, we should call them bad.
It can't be
but
that bad.
Like you think about Marshall, right? Like they had a couple talented corners, like Stephen Gilmore, good football player, going to get an NFL look. You even think about Stanford last week, although the secondary is not great. I mean, it's Caillou Blue Kelly's an NFL level cornerback, but when you're talking about UNLV, they don't have anybody that should be able to just go, I'm locking down Lorenzo Styles. They don't have a person there, man. They just don't. They don't have that guy. So again, we've had the red flag, the alert out a lot this year, right? The siren's been out. If something happens in a certain game, if Notre Dame leaves this game and the wide receivers don't have an impact, that siren is going off, man. It's going off because they just don't have a corner on this team that you're like, that guy could present problems. Like even in the bad pass defenses we've seen Notre Dame play over the season, I feel like every team still had a good player, like at least one good player that's like an NFL caliber-ish type of football player or just a flat out an NFL player. In this one, UNLV does not have a kid in the secondary that you say should give Notre Dame any problems. They just don't have it. And I agree. So even micro level from the get right game, this is a get right game for the wide receivers, man. If it's not going to happen this week, it's probably not going to happen this season, if we're being honest, right? Like this is the week it has to happen. It has to.
Yeah. And it has to be forced, Ryan. That's the thing. You have to force the issue. I mean, you could go out and beat UNLV without doing that. But it's not just about beating UNLV. It's also about building your team up. And you've got to get – Drew needs a game that he gets his confidence back, number one.
Yes.
And you've got to build up your confidence and your faith in your receivers. And it's not just by throwing a post route in the fourth quarter. You've got to do things where you come out right away. Like, I mean, the best thing you can do to get your receivers involved is, stop being like the only non-triple option team in America that doesn't use RPOs. I mean, freaking Stanford uses RPOs. You know what I mean? Yep. So – I think that's a big part of it, but then just do some things schematically that allow you to have success getting those guys going. I think that's a big key for this game because, as we've said many, many times, this is the kind of team that you can get right on. Other side of the ball,
I was going to say, Brian, I think that Notre Dame should maybe watch some UNLV offensive film a little more in depthly this week. Could you imagine if Notre Dame ran their offense, man, like just how they use the RPO game, the screen game? It'd be a lot more successful. But
they run this play. It's a really cool play, right? And they've had some success with it where they have their blockers and a tight end and a running back, and they kind of work like outside, almost like they're zone blocking outside, and they actually run outside of the tackle. Can you believe that? Like, how cool is that? They call it something like outside zone or something like that, I think is what they call it. Yeah, but apparently that's allowed. Yeah.
Brian's being sarcastic for people out there that haven't caught it yet. Haven't caught it. They're like, oh, really?
I mean, yeah, there's just a lot of stuff like that. They and that's kind of what I was gonna go to next, Ryan, is this is also a game where we're gonna learn if they have done things to get the linebacker play better, because this is the type of offense that can really stress out your linebackers if you're not disciplined or if you got too much on your plate. They do a lot of things to change your eye, to mess with your eye discipline, right? They'll run power read, they'll run outside zone, they'll run read zone, they'll run play action out of their shotgun. They do a lot of things to try to manipulate the linebackers and get them to bite down or go one direction as they pull and go a different direction. If the linebackers play a good game this week, Ryan, it's going to tell me, well, first of all, they need to shut this team down, but it's also going to tell me that they have taken the steps they need to in order to right the ship, because shutting down UNLV is not something that you just assume should happen. You've got to execute it. Now, Cal did a nice job of it. San Jose State and Air Force did a nice job of it, but they did it without Brumfield being in the game.
Yep.
So Cal, as we've said, Cal has a pretty good defense. We've been saying this since the offseason. Cal has a pretty good defense. So I want to see them come out and really shut them down, which they should, but you're going to have to get your linebackers to play well. So if Notre Dame's defensive line can just do a good job, the linebackers should be successful. And if they are, it's a good step because it tells me that the linebackers are maybe finally taking that step to getting themselves right, because this is the kind of team just schematically that can give a group of linebackers that are a little bit undisciplined and not overly productive some problems. So it's a good test.
Yeah, I mean, because think about it. You have Aiden Robbins, who we talked about a little bit, right? The running back who's their leading rusher, over 500 yards. He's a former Louisville transfer, and not only is he a pretty good downhill runner, I mean, he's also 6'3", 230 pounds, right? So, like, your second-level defenders need to bring their lunch pail in general because he's a bigger back. And then we've already talked extensively about the fact that Doug Brumfield is going to try to take advantage of his athletic gifts when he has opportunities against your second and third level. Like, he's going to try to do that because he has that ability to run some zone read. He has the ability to work out of structure. He has the ability to extend the football as a runner. So linebackers need to play well in this game, man, because how UNLV operates, Brian, for me, is like, yes, they want to throw the football, but at the core, they want to get Aiden Robbins going downhill, and they want to use Doug Brumfield to get out of structure a little bit.
They want to be a
those
balanced
guys
football
running
team.
threats.
Right.
Exactly.
They want to be a balanced football team. They've had to be more pass reliant at times because they just haven't always been able to get their run game going. But and that's the thing is you can't allow that to happen. You can't, and they're gonna. And look, here's the thing too: is UNLV knows we don't have the dudes up front to just go out and run our offense against Notre Dame. So they're going to do some stuff to mess with you. They did and it worked for a big play. Did you see the play against San Jose where they ran a sweep, reverse, flea flicker, bomb? I think that was the one that Seneca McKee caught like inside the 10-yard line. And Jacob Brumfield has the kind of arm that he can launch that sucker 60-plus yards down the field on that type of play. They're going to do stuff. They're going to try to quickly get the ball on the perimeter. They're going to run reverses. They're going to try to bootlegs. They're going to try to do things to steal big play opportunities because they know they can't beat you, which only enhances the need for you to be disciplined a linebacker. But they want to be balanced. They're also not going to force it if they're getting their butt kicked up front. And I think that's smart coaching. Like, look, we're not going to beat our head against the wall trying to do something we're not real good at if it's not going well. And if you're Notre Dame, it's like other games, Ryan. Take that away, make them one-handed. Doug Brumfield's not good enough to beat you if they're rushing for 50 yards in this game. He's not.
100%.
He's not.
Well, and I mean, we haven't talked about this, but I mean, we kind of have a little bit, but I think UNLV also has an understanding like, hey, we're coming into South Bend when Notre Dame is struggling, when they've lost to a team that's a little bit like us. Like they've lost to a Marshall already, a group of 5 level team. And I think that UNLV is going to come into this game hungry, man. Like this is an opportunity for them, right? Like this is the formula that Notre Dame has struggled against. An athletic quarterback who they have some guys on the perimeter that can make some plays. I know, and Notre Dame has struggled at home, right? Like we've talked about this. They have struggled at home this year. So if anybody's expecting UNLV to just in the back of their mind go, man, we're going to come in there, we're going to collect a check, and we're going to go home with hopefully a close loss. Like, no, UNLV is going to come in to try to win. Like they're going to do that. So I expect a hungry UNLV team. But to your point, Brian, linebacker in the original point, they have to be ready to play their game because even when we're outside of Aiden Robbins and Doug Brumfield, you also have the wide receivers that get involved in the screen game, the RPO game, and that's also manipulating second level as well, too. So another hopeful get-right-for game for the linebackers because we just have not had a great showing from that department so far this year.
No, we haven't. And we're going to do a mailbag after this. So if you have questions, we do have a couple super chats and a couple questions. Get those in here now because we're going to be wrapping this up here real soon. Ryan, I think UNLV is going to come in fired up. But I also think they're going to come in a little bit they're going to be, I think their emotions are going to be high, but I think in the back of their mind, they're also going to be a little bit fragile because you're coming off of back-to-back beatdowns. And so, yeah, you're going to convince yourself, hey, we can go play. This is a wounded Notre Dame team. This is our chance. We're going to come out and play. But, and we'll talk more about this in the keys to victory tomorrow because I guarantee you starting fast will be on one of ours because they have yet to do it. Where if you can kind of come out and just have that kind of first quarter that you're capable of, you can put this team away early. And I'll say this, we're going to know by the end of the first quarter if Notre Dame's come to play or not. I mean, flat out, we'll know. And so it's not going to take long to determine if Notre Dame has righted the ship because this is offensively more so than defensively. But offensively, yeah, we're going to find out real quick if they've made the necessary adjustments. And even if they start fast, we're going to know, okay, they're just out-talenting these guys. Nothing's different, which is going to be a problem for moving forward games. So we're going to learn a lot about them right away. So that's a little look at the UNLV running Rebels. Quality ascending Mountain West team. Again, a team Notre Dame should handle, but also a team that if you overlook them, they can make this a much more competitive game. So it's just one of those opportunities for you to come out and do that. So Marcus Arroyo doing a good job, Ryan. Really like what he's doing. I'm very curious to see how many transfers end up there this offseason. If they can continue to win, would love to see them come out of this game with a big loss, but then rally back and go kind of 3-1 or 4-0 down the stretch and just keep rolling, because it's doable. I mean, 3-1 is very doable when you look at their schedule. I mean, San Diego State's probably the toughest team they're going to play down the stretch. The rest of those teams are not good. So certainly an opportunity for them. So before we move on to the mailbag, I want to ask for you all to do us a favor. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this podcast. If you're listening via podcast platform, please give us a 5-star review. We'd greatly appreciate it. Check out all the cool things we've got down there. We've got Built Bar. We got our merch store. We've got all types of things. It's getting cold outside, Ryan, so it's time for me to talk to you about getting you an IB hoodie. And I just ordered myself a couple new IB hoodies. So definitely check the store out. We've got several different colors and sizes and types of hoodies, so those will be good to go. And of course, everybody, sign up for the boards.irishbreakdown.com to sign up to our premium message board. And thank you for being with us on this portion of the Irish Breakdown podcast. So, Ryan, we're going to now transition into the mailbag. And we don't have a lot of questions right now, so this may go quickly. We'll see if everybody steps up and kind of get some questions in there, and we can kind of get rocking and rolling. And so let's start off with a couple of these super chats, Ryan. We have a couple from Charlie Weiss's last belt loop. He said, if Jimmy, I assume he's talking about Jimmy Clausen, was QB right now, the year he was on fire with all those TDs, what is Notre Dame's record with his team? Thanks, IB. Your content is fire lately. If Jimmy Clausen was the team starting quarterback, I would assume that they're 6-0.
I would say 6-0, yeah.
It would mask problems that exist. You know what I mean? If they called the games the same way. Now, what we don't know is if he had a Jimmy Clausen type of quarterback, would the offense look a lot more like it did with Jack Cohn last year, schematically? That's the question. We don't know.
You would think so. You would think so. Yeah. And I mean, we talked about it a lot. Like Jack Cohn masked a few things last year when he was rolling down the stretch. And I think Jimmy would do the same thing, because although they're different sizes and Jimmy's, like obviously they're a little bit different of football players, stylistically, they want to win in similar ways, right? They want to be quick processors, get the ball out, be accurate, all that type of stuff. So I think you're at least 5-1. Maybe you have a close loss to Ohio State in a narrow defeat, but regardless, I think 5-1 at worst if you have Jimmy Clausen right now.
Yes. I agree with that. I think that, because the problem against Ohio State is they couldn't protect the quarterback. And that would have been an issue, especially with Jimmy playing, because he wasn't a very mobile guy. But there's no way they lose to Marshall if Jimmy's on this team. There's no way they lose to Stanford if Jimmy's on this team. And I know Jimmy's teams lost, but he wasn't on very good teams. He didn't have the kind of defense. Like, again, what Notre Dame couldn't stop anybody in 2009. Right, this year that wouldn't be a problem. They would certainly be able to stop people. There's no doubt about that. So, we'll have to do that. So I'm going to also ask Tommy Guns, one of the OGs on our site. So Tommy has, he sent me this earlier today. His daughter is doing a fundraiser called Reading for Education. Tommy, I'm going to ask that you put the link into the chat below. And so he is doing a fundraiser with his daughter. If any of you all be interested in helping support his daughter's fundraiser for Reading for Education, the link he's going to put down there below is going to explain to you kind of what they're doing. And we always try to help support each other here at Irish Breakdown. So, Tommy, definitely do that. Definitely put that in there and help support Tommy's daughter reading for what is it called? I think I said Reading for Education. Isn't that what I said it was? Yes, Reading for Education.
I believe so.
Yeah, cool. So there you go. Because Ryan, you're going to be doing that here in a few years as well, man. Once your daughter gets into school, you're going to be calling me, trying to sell me chocolates and all these other type of things. Vince is always sending his kids over here trying to sell me stuff from the different fundraisers that they do. So. We'll be doing that. So somebody asked also if we'll be doing the Thanksgiving fundraiser this year. Probably not, just because it's just been a challenging year, a couple months time wise for me, and just things going on with my family. I just don't think I'm going to have the time to not only do the fundraiser, but then everything that goes with it, leading up to and then afterwards. So we will not be, but I do have a couple things that I have planned that I want to really start doing those and making those more of a regular part of what we do. But there's just some other things that came up during that last year that made it we've just got to figure some things out, and we've been working on here for a while before we're going to do that. But yeah, so that's kind of where we're at. So, all right. So actually, let me kind of pull this up, and I'm going to put this link in the chat because I think Tommy's driving right now. So I will try to get this over here and put that up. So anyway, let's move on to our next set of questions here. And we have one we had another super chat from Charlie Weiss, the last belt loop. Jimmy, Tobias, and Mayer combo would be deadly. And I mean, it's not just that. It's Braden Lindsay. It's Lorenzo Styles. It's the running backs out of the backfield. Jimmy used to throw the running backs all the time. It's, it'd be throwing back shoulders to Deion Colsey. I mean, Jimmy would be deadly with a lot of dudes. You know what I mean? Like, I know a lot of people didn't like him, and I get it. Trust me, I get it. But that dude in 2019 or 2009 was as good of a passer as you're going to see. I mean,
it was like 28 touchdowns to 4 interceptions or something like that, right? Like, it was just absurd. Yeah. It was just absurd.
And that was with not much of a supporting cast on defense. And it was just, he was like 69% completion percentage. He was lights out, and like with no line. And that's the biggest thing for me is he had great skill talent. The problem is he didn't have very good talent everywhere else. Right. Like the offensive line couldn't block anybody. I mean, it was, it was not good. It was certainly not good. So very, very disappointing prediction or year there from that.
I would also like to throw in, although he's not a perfect fit into the Reese offense, could you imagine Brady Quinn throwing some back shoulder fades to Tobias Merriweather down the field?
Yes, and Deion Colsey, yes, absolutely.
And Michael Mayer. Yeah.
And Brady could throw a good post route too. So I mean, he was really good up the seams as well. So he would certainly have some. Yeah, it would be fun. I love this, by the way, this hashtag ban the scan. That's glorious. Absolutely. And I'll have an article coming up about that here when we get done with the show. So definitely want to check that out. Next question, Ryan.
That's a shirt. That's a shirt. Ban the scan. Yes. I like it.
You know what? That's not a bad idea at all. If they keep doing that, I may have to do that. We are not Marshall, Brian and Ryan. Does Tommy take a shot down the field immediately out of the gate, or is it establish the run and then take shots? Honestly, I don't care if it's right away. I mean, sure, it's fine, but I also think that you need to do whatever you need to do to come out and establish rhythm. That's what I care about in the first series. Come out and establish rhythm. If you think that is, look, this is what we're anticipating. We think they're going to come out against us early on and line up and put 5 guys on the line and play cover 1, and we're going to take a shot against that. That's cool. I'm good with that. I'm fine with that. If you think, however, that we're going to come out and maybe push the tempo, run the ball on them, get Drew out of the pocket and just let him get some easy stuff, maybe throw a couple screens, do some things like that to get him into rhythm and get the offense into rhythm, and then you come back to some shots maybe on Series 2, I'm cool with that too, or Series 3, I'm cool with that too. It's about establishing a rhythm, Ryan. I think that's more important than establishing your willingness to throw the ball down the field. Now, part of rhythm may be, hey, we need to take a shot to back them off. Like I said, I'm good with that too. It's just not like if they don't take a shot in the first 5 plays, I'm throwing my hat down and cussing Tom Reese. No, come out and move the ball, get into rhythm. That's what I care about. And if they can do that, I don't care how they do it. I just want to see them come out and get into a nice rhythm. And hopefully that means they're throwing some RPOs. Hopefully that means a lot of different things. I don't know if it will or won't, but hopefully it does. Hopefully it does.
Just please no 3 and out on the first offensive drive. Oh, please.
I beg of you.
I beg of you.
Yes, it'd be nice.
The worst possibility is like incomplete pass or run of 0, and then you run the ball in 2nd and 10, and then it's 3rd and long, and it's incomplete pass. Like that's my worst nightmare for Notre Dame right now because we've seen it way too much so far this year.
Yep. We have YouTube user. I don't quite know who this is, but it's a good comment. He said the BYU Week estimate commented saying we are Notre Dame. If we play our game, we will win. Some seem to not like that. Did people not actually like? Was there actually people saying they didn't like that? I think we need more of that. Own who we are, dominate weaker opponents, and own it. Yeah, look, I am all for saying things like that as long as it's not said in a disrespectful manner, right? And I did not think Audric was doing that at all. Audric was basically saying what coaches say. Look, we can focus on ourselves. If we play our game, we can beat anybody. Don't you want your guys to believe that? And as long as they don't say it in this team is trash, we're going to beat this team. don't say that, right? Don't call your rival your little brother. That's disrespectful. I didn't find anything wrong. There's too much of this tamping down the Notre Dame players. Remember when Liam Eichenberg was like, "Yeah, we're going to go to there and kick their ass and get on the bus and come home," right? Again, talking about Virginia Tech, like okay, I kind of like that. I want this team to have some swagger, and want them to have that confidence, as long as it's backed up by how you play. I mean, don't have that false bravado and that false sense of you're talking yourself into thinking you're good. If you're good, and as long as it's somewhat done with somewhat level of respect. I like that. I think this team, it's like what Tobias said in his press conference on Monday. He's like, Tuesday, he was like, I saw cover 0 and I knew I was going to score. I'm like, I want that confidence level. I want, and he said it so matter of fact too. He's like, yeah, I just came out and I saw cover 0 and I was like, yeah, I'm about to score. And he wasn't talking trash. He was a confident kid, and that's what he saw. But you need that kind of confidence when you line up and play. Like, this dude can't cover me, and I'm about to go score because they're trying to go cover 0. They're trying to have this dude cover me because that's what he's saying, right? That's what Tobias is saying. They're going cover 0, and that dude can't cover me. So this is going to be a touchdown, right? I mean, that's what he's saying, but he said it in a much classier, respectful manner. But it came from a place of confidence, and I want more of that. This is not a very confident football team right now, Ryan.
You need more. You need more. Some people would like to be successful, and others need to be successful. Like, there's a huge difference there. There's a huge difference, and I think you need more of that, to your point, Brian. Like, you need more of Tobias, what Tobias said, man. Like, if you have a one-on-one opportunity, you should believe that you're going to score a touchdown. Like, you shouldn't hope that you're going to score a touchdown. You should believe it. Like, that's the point blank to it. Like, that's it, man. That's it. You need more of it. Just need more.
Yep. Irish Blooded says, I expect to see UNLV throw the kitchen sink at Notre Dame just because the Irish are on the ropes. Well,
Agreed.
I would double down on that, Irish Blooded. I think it's not just that Notre Dame is on the ropes, but they're on the ropes. Because if Notre Dame had a bad loss to Stanford, but they're coming off back-to-back games where they lost 40-something to like 7, right? If I believe I'm accurate on that, Ryan. Yes, they lost to San Jose State 40-7 and lost to Air Force 42-7. So yes, they are also a team on the ropes, in my opinion. So I think they're also going to do that to try to do something to spark themselves as well. I think that's going to be a key as well. So we'll see how it goes here real quick. 10-day had a question. He goes, is anybody else not getting IB notifications or have to look up IB when they are not in your feed? And that's not good. I know 10-day is subscribed and has the notification bell on, so I'm not quite sure what that deal is. So we put the podcast up today around noon. So
is there like an option, 10-day? Maybe if you go in there, maybe if you go to your settings, maybe you absolutely silence the notifications. Like, I don't know. I'm not sure. That's weird though.
Yeah. Let's get to some more questions here. Let's see. We have a question from. We have one from Irishman 7114. I feel like UNLV is one season away from being a Mountain West contender, assuming they get some good transfers. They look much better, though that was a pretty low bar. It was a very low bar. Bar. They were bad. But to his point, I mean, if they can have a good grad transfer, or not grad transfer, I always just automatically say grad transfer. They have a good transfer offseason, because I think the coaching is there. As long as Arroyo and most of that staff stays together, I really like what they're doing, Ryan, as a football program. I really like the things that they're doing and the way that they're playing. And they're not just out there out talenting people. They're not that good of a football team. They're coached well. And we saw against the last 2 games that they are not where they need to be overall talent wise. They're not, but they're still going out there and doing some good things. So yeah, I would like to see him. I would like to see him continue to be successful. Yes, absolutely. He's building.
Because look how the other teams in the Mountain West are trending right now. I mean, like Fresno State lost Kalen DeBoer. Jake Hayner's a 6-year senior, so they're going to be out, and they've struggled without Hayner this year. You think about Nevada now that Jay Norvell's gone and Carson Strong and all those guys left this past offseason as well. They're down. I think Colorado State's going to take a step up eventually with Jay Norvell. Like, I think that was a pretty good hire by them, and Jay's shown that he can be successful, but right now they're not a good football team. San Diego State's down right now with Brady Hoke. Their offense is just a dumpster fire right now. And then the most consistent team now this year, Brian, is Air Force. And like, that's awesome. Air Force has done a tremendous job, but you know how military academies are, man. Sometimes they go a little bit up and down because it's tough to maintain a lot when you're in one of those situations. So I think UNLV has a great opportunity. If they hit a couple transfers out of the ballpark, they recruit a little bit better, they continue to develop, I think Arroyo could build something pretty solid there in the Mountain West. I do.
Yeah. And Air Force just had a bad loss 2 weeks ago. It made they lost losing to Utah State, like in Wyoming. You're like, what are you doing? That made no sense. San Jose State was rolling until they lost to Fresno last week. I mean, their only loss coming into that game last week was to Auburn by 8 at Auburn. So it's been a weird year. Boise State's starting to get rolling. They're actually undefeated in the league right now, but they've been rolling ever since they benched their quarterback. That they lost to UTEP and Oregon State in non-conference games. So they're a weird team. So the Mountain West is just not good. To Ryan's point, it's there for the taking. I mean, remember how good the Mountain West used to be? They had Utah, BYU, Boise, Nevada was really good under Chris Alt. Like the Mountain West was like, and then there was years where Fresno was really good when they went from the WAC to the Mountain West. Like,
historically, they were really good in that era. But I mean, Brian, even think back to just last year, man. Like Nevada was a double-digit win team. Fresno State was a double-digit win team. Like San Diego State's always a good football team traditionally. Like just last year, Mountain West was really good. Yeah. They took a big downside in one off season, honestly, in that conference.
San Diego State especially, that was weird. Yeah. They were a 12-2 football team last year. They beat Arizona on the road by 24. They beat Utah in overtime. They lost to Fresno, who was pretty good. They lost to Utah State in the conference championship game, and then they went and beat UTSA, who was really good last year, by 2 touchdowns. They beat Boise State by 11. That was Utah last year. Beat Nevada, who you said was a double-digit or 8-win team last year. Utah State was a double-digit win team last year, and they played each other in the conference championship. And then you come out this year, Utah State stinks. They're not very good. And then San Diego State's 3-3. With a blowout loss to Boise, a blowout loss to Utah, and a blowout loss to Arizona. Their wins are over Idaho, a 3-point home win over Toledo, and then they beat Hawaii by 2, who's not very good. So, and I still don't understand why Jay Norvell left Nevada to go to Colorado State.
I said Nevada too. You're fine.
No, but I said both. So I'm going to try to at least be consistent with it for this show. Gotcha. So I don't know. That didn't make a lot of sense. Unless maybe that
seems a little lateral of a move because he actually brought
even maybe like a step down. I don't like the Colorado State job. I don't.
Yeah.
I really don't like that.
Because even his offensive coordinator Matt Mumme came with him too, which is like, really interesting. So you're right. I mean, it was definitely an odd move.
Issue there, like maybe there's a reason he left. Like that could be it too.
Maybe possible.
All right, let's get to our next question here from Robert Bishop. Records aside, how does this is a good one, Ryan. I'll have you answer this one. How does this UNLV team compare or match up against Stanford?
Okay, so I mean, offensively, I think UNLV would give Stanford a little bit of issues, right? Because again, they're pretty good in space. I think Ricky White in the passing game, as long as Doug Brumfield is healthy, will give them some issues. They'll be able to throw the football around a little bit. Stanford would probably do an okay job up front defensively, although they're not the most talented. UNLV's offensive line is just not very good. So I think that they would make UNLV a little bit one-dimensional, but I think UNLV would have some good opportunities in the passing game against Stanford. Defensively, I just think, especially if Stanford's offensive line is healthy, like they'd be able to bully UNLV a little bit, right? Because they have one good defensive end, they have one good linebacker, but I think Stanford would have probably even better success running the football. Well, definitely better success than they had against Notre Dame. Like, there's no doubt about that. They would do a pretty good job there. And then passing-wise, Tanner McKee would probably torch UNLV's secondary, right? Like Michael Wilson, Elijah Higgins, they would have a lot of impact. So I think they would be able to score a lot against UNLV, but I do think UNLV would also score a little bit on Stanford. So
I think it'd be a high-scoring game. I do.
Yeah.
I think it'd be like a 38 to 30.
Okay, I was going to say like 42 to 30, somewhere in that ballpark.
Similar. Yeah. It's same number of scores. So you're just going with your last score being another touchdown. Mine was a field goal. I mean, we're in the same ballpark. I think they'd move on it, but I think Stanford would be able to control the clock and run on them. And Stanford's not a very good running team, but I think they'd run on that team. I believe, and they would just throw back shoulders. Tanner McKee would have a field day against that defense. When I mean Stanford would run on them, it just means more like just they'd be able to be balanced, but they would throw all over them. And I don't think this is a team, Ryan, like their sack numbers are okay, right? Like their sack numbers are okay, but they've got to dial up pressures to get sacks. And I don't know if that's something that you would necessarily want to do. I mean, they got 17 sacks in 7 games. That's not bad, but they got to dial up a lot of pressures. I mean, their second and third leading sack guys are linebackers. They've got a DB sack. They've got, let's see, 3, 5, 6 of their 17 sacks or 7 of their 17 sacks come from non-defensive linemen.
Mm-hmm.
So they got to dial up pressures, and that can hurt you against a team like Notre Dame or a team like Stanford if they can find ways to get the ball out and get the ball where it needs to go. So,
yep.
Yeah, I think that'd be an exciting game. I think it'd be an exciting game. I don't think they have the horses at the end of the day to really stay with them, as Ryan alluded to. Irish Mills 540. Will a gray hoodie be available, Brian? Not sure if this is a normal color that is available or not. Yeah, we have several different colors. So if you actually go to the merch store, and the link is below if you're on the YouTube channel. And if you're not on the YouTube channel, there's, I believe, a link to our store in our articles. I have to go look at that. I should probably have that in there. But if you can also find it at boards.irishbreakdown.com, you can see a link to the store up the top. You don't have to be a member of Irish Breakdown to be able to click on the store. But I think the address is like store.irishbreakdown.com, I believe. But anyway, if like there's like a green hoodie picture, we have other colors than just the one that's there. So if you click on like a hat or a t-shirt or a hoodie, it'll have all the different colors that we have available for that particular shirt. So if you go there, you'll definitely want to check that out. And I have a gray hoodie. There's several gray hoodies. That's kind of my favorite color, to be honest with you. It's just kind of gray hoodies. And I got a couple different colors of gray hoodies. I got one actually over there that's kind of like a heather gray. It's the darker gray on there as well.
I just put the link. Put the link in the chat if anybody wants to see.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. So next question is from Jason Rose. Excuse me. Hey guys, who are some potential quarterback transfers in the offseason, not just for Notre Dame, talking in general? So I want to speak to this because we keep getting asked this a lot. It's really kind of useless to talk about that right now because any kid that's in the portal now is probably not a kid you're going to want to go after because he either got benched or got in trouble, right? It's not really where you want to go. It's rare that a kid that can be a player at Notre Dame is going to enter the portal now. I have no idea who's going to enter the portal at the end of the season. Like for a minute there, it was looking like Tyler Van Dyke might enter the portal because he got benched in the game, but then he's come back and just ripped people since he came back. I think he's thrown for like almost 400 yards a game since he got benched. If I'm remembering correctly on that, like the numbers correctly on that, but he has been brilliant. So I mean, now it's looking maybe a little less likely that he's going to hit the transfer portal. So there's just so many different factors that go into it, Ryan. I mean, it'd be kind of silly. Yeah, he threw for 496 so he got benched against Middle Tennessee. Threw for 138 yards that game, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. Came back against North Carolina. They had a bye week. Comes back against Carolina. Goes 42 of 57 for 496 yards and 3 touchdowns and a pick. Then comes out the next week on the road to Virginia Tech. Goes 29 of 46 for 351 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, yeah, I don't see him entering the portal now unless things go down again, which, of course, they could. But it's way too early. I mean, we don't know what coaches are going to get fired. We don't know what transfers are going to go that then force somebody else into them. I mean, there's so much that goes into this. And so it's not a question that we're going to address. I wanted to bring it up because I know, Jason, you're not the only one to ask this. It's just the guys that are in the portal right now are not guys you're going to want. Like Hank Bachmeier is not a guy that I would want Notre Dame to go after. Like, no. And And I think it'd be unfair for me to speculate that, hey, so-and-so, and I'm only bringing up Tyler Van Dyke now because it looks like he's not going to be a portal guy, but, hey, this guy's going to get in the portal. That guy's going to get in the portal. I mean, there's some interesting potential options, but we need to see how things play out first, Well,
and people are projecting a lot of guys that, like, you don't even know will be available. Like, I mean, we've been asked several times, and, I'm an advocate of Jeff Sims from Georgia Tech, but he's not in the portal. People have talked a lot about Cade McNamara. Like, there's a lot of guys that are just kind of been thrown out there. Like, we don't know who's going to be available. For
sure, I would not go after.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
he decommitted from your program and left you to go to Michigan, right? Number one. Yep. Number two, he's not that good. And he's Drew Pine. He's a less mobile version of Drew Pine.
He literally is Drew Pine. Yep, you're right.
So no, that's definitely not one that I would look into at all. And you keep talking about Jeff Sims. He's 6 games in. He's got 5 touchdowns and 2 picks, right? I mean, he's going to have to start playing a lot better before you're going to be able to go make a run at him. But that's the other thing too, is a guy that's maybe not playing well now that may jump portal. If he lights it up down the stretch to the point where you're going to want him, he may not want to leave then. I mean, there's just so much that goes into it. We'll have plenty to talk about in the offseason about quarterback transfers. But it is something that what I will say, Ryan, is no matter what happens with Drew Pine and Tyler Buckner, they need to go get a transfer portal quarterback that can compete.
Agreed.
Now, are you handing that guy the job? No, he's going to have to battle, but they need to have someone that can. They need a Jack Cohn type or better that can come in and compete and then make that guy win the job. And if he does, great. If he doesn't, great, because that means those other kids have stepped up and played well. It's a great question from Katie Keevers. Thank you, Katie. What is the first thing? And Katie, I wanted to thank you too. When the North Carolina postgame show, when I had just gotten the news about Rita and was told that the vet had told us that we needed to put her down, I thought I was hiding it well, but Katie noticed that something was wrong, and I just wanted to thank you for that. By the way, that compassion, that care. I had somebody email me today, Ryan, just saying, "Hey, with everything going on, I hope you're doing okay. Are you handling?" I can't tell you how much I love this community and just the family feel and how people care about each other. It's really amazing. And so, Katie, I wanted to thank you. And I know John is also, your husband John's also a watcher of the show. So I wanted to thank you guys very, very much for your support and care. But Katie has a good question. What is the first thing you are looking for on Saturday to reassure you that Freeman has righted the ship? Ryan, I'll let you start off with that one, and then I will certainly say what I'm looking for on Saturday. So what is the first thing that you're looking for on Saturday to reassure you that Coach Freeman has righted the ship?
Well, I think macro view, it's energy, right? Like, I think that we've talked a lot about that, right? Like, there just doesn't seem to be any juice to this team right now. Like, I want to see going from pregame into the game, guys excited to be there, man. Look like they have a reason to come out with the fire in the belly, right? Like, I need to see that. So energy is the biggest thing. Outside of that, I mean, offensively, I want to see simplification, right? Like, and defensively too, I want to see guys flying around. And you can tell, Brian, you can tell when guys are much more confident in what is expected of them because they just move a little bit faster. They read a little bit cleaner. You can tell very early, I believe, Katie, like what if the offense and defense are working at a better pace because guys are just more excited to be there. So I think just from a macro view, it's energy, man. I want to see energy around this team. And I just feel like there hasn't been a lot of energy over the last few games.
That's certainly one. And I think that's an important one, Ryan. For me, is I want to see some tempo. I want to see some aggressiveness in all phases of the game. I want to see the offense coming out, not doing the scan stuff and not going slow. Because if they just come out and they're still doing the scan stuff and it works against UNLV's pretty bad defense, it doesn't mean that you've changed anything. It just means you have way better players than they have. I want to see them come out with some aggressiveness. Now, aggressiveness does not mean coming out throwing bombs. Aggressiveness can be tempo. It can mean mixing up your runs. It means looking to create big play opportunities. I want to see the defense being aggressive. Again, aggressive doesn't mean 7-man pressures. It means flying to the ball. And so it's kind of like what Ryan is saying, but for me, it's an aggressiveness thing. But then I also want to see, Katie, more like specific to the game. I want to see that the stuff they talked about today, the simplification thing, I want to see it manifest. I want to see them, coming out and not like, to me, the scan means you've got a lot of volume and you need to get in the right call. If you're just coming out going tempo, hey, we're getting in these looks and we're going. And there may be situations on third down where you want to do the scan to make sure you get into a good look. I mean, those are downs where you will see more of that, right? But just overall, I want to see that. I want to see the teams mixing them up. I want to see that they've made some of the schematic changes and philosophical changes that are needed for this team to be successful. That's going to be the big thing for me, Katie, because Notre Dame can come out and overwhelm Stanford, overwhelm UNLV, and we're still going to say at the end, not a thing has changed. Not a thing has changed. And that's what we do. That's the thing I do not want to be saying at the end of this game, Ryan, is that, yeah, they rolled this team that's really good, but we really didn't see anything different. And that would be a very disappointing sign.
That's a worst case scenario, man. That's the worst case scenario.
Yeah. Yep. Kyle Wade has a comment. So bold prediction for me, Tobias Merriweather, Lorenzo Styles, and Michael Mayer go for 100 each, and Estime hits 150. No one else will get significant targets in the pass game. So we had to get that little negative comment in there despite the good start. But look, here's the deal. If those three guys all go over 100 yards, I don't care if anybody else gets targeted in the pass game. I mean,
yeah,
that's a
100%.
good,
100%.
That's a great sign because it means two receivers went for over 100. That's a good sign. And that's kind of what we talked about earlier, whether it's Braden Lindsay and Lorenzo, whether it's Lorenzo and Tobias, whether it's Tobias and Jaden Thomas. I don't care as long as it's, two of those guys that kind of go out and got 100. I'd be fine with that because I don't expect them to throw 50 passes in this game. So, that would also mean that you ripped off some big plays against UNLV as well, Ryan.
And on top of that, if you had that, because that's 300 plus yards just out of three players, right? And then if you combine that with Estime running for 150, Estime is a part of a committee approach, right? So that's not even counting what Chris Tyree did, what Logan Diggs did, if the quarterback had any positives in the run game as well. Like all those things together, that is a great offensive day. And boy, does Notre Dame need it, Kyle. So I'm here for it, man. I sign up. I sign on the dotted line right now for that type of day.
Yep, absolutely. Getting the questions rolling in now. Ray Holcroft, at this point, what is a successful season? 7-5 or 8-4, or is it about the coaching utilizing their players to their strengths and guys start to play to their potential? What does success look like now? I want to rephrase his original question, Ryan, because right now, I don't think there's anything that I would necessarily consider a successful season when you look at the season as a whole, because you lost to Marshall, because you lost to Stanford. If it was just the Marshall loss, that can be overcome, but you're now at best 9-3. However, I do think that a successful finish could give this program a lot of momentum that would make it look like a successful season. As we said, look, 9-3 is not a successful season to me, and that's the best they can do with this talent and who you lost to.
Yep.
Now, what would make for a successful finish to me? I mean, obviously 6-0 is the easy one, but they've got to go 5-1 down the stretch. And the loss they have has to be to Clemson or USC, and it has to be really, really close. That would be a successful finish. Now, it's still an overall disappointing season, but I think you'd at least have some momentum in that scenario where you now look, if you go 6-0, I think, and then let's say they get into the Gator Bowl and play an SEC team and win. Okay, then we maybe can have a conversation about, it didn't start well, but the way they finished and the momentum they have, this is a successful season because it's going to springboard you to success for next year. Okay, we can have that conversation. It would still be a team that didn't reach their potential. And that's kind of the last part is I want to see this team playing like the team it's capable of being. If that means 6-0, 5-1, 4-2, if there's a lot of injuries, I just want to see that this staff knows how to get the most out of this football team. Whatever that looks like. It's just, in my opinion, I think if that happens, 5-1 and 6-0 is who this team should be if they start playing to their potential week after week. But the way this team is, Ryan, they could go out and beat Syracuse and Clemson in back-to-back games, beat Navy, and you think everything's turned around, and then they could lose at home to Boston College. That's how weird this team has been so far this year. And it's just hard to predict who they're going to be. And that's the concern. So I want to see that being gone. That's the other thing is I want to see a level of consistency from this football team. And if they do that, start playing to their potential, then I think this team could go on a roll. I do. And we've seen them do it. I mean, if they play like they did against North Carolina, they can beat anybody they have on their schedule, in my opinion. Just, I don't know if they're going to do that.
Yeah.
Call me Ty says, do you guys think Foskey could play some big end and be useful against spread teams? Maybe use Justin Adamiola or Jordan Patelho or whoever at Viper. Ryan, looks like you have an answer to that one.
I mean, it's 100%, Brian. I mean, look, Isaiah Foskey has not made the impact from a sack perspective or from a tackle for loss perspective that we wanted to this year, or just from a consistent pressure perspective. But the one thing Isaiah has done really well is he's been a good player in the run game for the most part. Like, he's done a good job getting hands-on, gaining extension, working off of blocks. He's done some good stuff in the run game. So can he play big end? Absolutely. No doubt. I mean, the kid's 6'5", 260 pounds with long arms. Like, he could play big end, and especially against spread teams and teams that are going to ask to, not many tight end, usage in the offense, and a team that just wants to spread you out. Yes, absolutely. And I actually think this is the week that I might want to see it a little bit more, right? Because we talked about maybe moving Riley Mills a little more inside against a spread team of UNLV and kind of utilizing the length and the explosiveness he has inside. putting Isaiah as that big end and getting guys like Justin on the field, I mean, I think that's a great option. So yes, in long answer to say, yes, I believe that he could play big end, especially against spread teams.
All right, let's get to some more questions here. John Owanski has a question here. John, thank you for your question. Brian and Ryan, from your sources, do you know if Tommy and Marcus Freeman have strategy sessions like Brady and Belichick had back in the day? Heard you talk about how it needs to happen, but I'm shocked it's not. I mean, they talk. I'm sure they talk on a regular basis. I mean, from the comments that Coach Freeman makes, it sounds like he knew kind of going in what the game plans are. I just don't think he's having enough of a thorough evaluation of it as much. And maybe that's something that should change and that's something that's got to happen like on Monday, or
Yes.
Sunday when they start their practices. If it's like, because some head coaches will do this, like they'll just, hey, meet with me on Friday, let's go over the game plan and all that. That's because you've got a veteran coach and you trust what they're going to do and you just want to know what's going on so you can be prepared to handle the week and all that kind of stuff. I think it needs to, with where things are going now, it needs to happen at the beginning of the week, just so you can make sure. Like one of the things we heard, and I heard this from multiple very, very close sources, is the Marshall week. So they practiced Monday and Tuesday, because remember, they usually practice Sunday and Tuesday, but they had all those travel issues coming back from Ohio State. So they didn't practice till Monday. So Monday and Tuesday, they had a certain game plan that was geared more towards stopping the run. Sounds like a good idea based on how Marshall is as a team, and their quarterback can't throw the ball past 10 yards and just who they are, right? And how that game portrayed. Wednesday, I was told they scrapped, and I was told this during the week, and I should have listened to it. They scrapped that game plan and went with a new game plan that was more pass game oriented. Like that kind of stuff can't happen. Head coach can't allow that to happen. You know what I mean? And it's like, why are we switching to a pass-oriented game plan with Henry Columbia as the quarterback? Like a run-oriented game plan is going to stop what they do throwing the football, right? Make them beat you down the field. Notre Dame didn't go with that game plan. They went with a softer game plan, and Marshall just ran at them, picked them apart with quick game, and they played right into Marshall's hands, right? That's where the head coach has got to say, nope, that's not a good idea, right? And now that's what we talked about yesterday, Ryan. And I know you were listening because you were in the chat asking who my favorite employee was. But he's got to – I know he wants to let his coaches coach, but this is still on him, right? Yeah. This is still on him, and I think he needs to have more of a say in those kind of things. And at the very least, if you know you got to go over the game plan with him, maybe there's a little bit more accountability that you're going to make sure you've really thought this through and have a good plan when you're going to sit down with the head coach.
I mean, he's going to take all the scrutiny when they win or lose, right? Or when they lose, right? So why wouldn't you have your stamp on it? I mean, at the end of the day, if I'm the leader of something, if I am the CEO, if I am the overseer, and at the end of the day, my name is on the line, I would like to stamp everything about the company, about the team, about the program, whatever. Like it's your baby, right? Like it's his. It's his. So make it yourself.
Ryan, you know what that's like. You know what that's like.
What?
Just like having to run everything through me early on. Just like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like as you were getting started, just like hey, can I do this? Can I do that? Can I do this? Can I do that? Because like you said, it's your baby. And if it fails, you're the one that's held responsible for it. If you're Marcus Freeman, he needs to take more control. And it sounds like, at least from what we've heard, that he did. Now I just want to see it play out on Saturday.
That's positive. Yep. It was a big positive hearing it. Now we need to see it. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Irish Mills 540. Brian, I know we're focusing on this current season, but what are your thoughts on if we go into 2023 with Tyler Buckner, Drew Pine, and Steve Angeli as our only quarterbacks concerning I'm very concerned just from a standpoint of Tyler Buckner is injury prone and you're back to being in the situation you are now where you're an injury away or a guy struggling away from Ron Paulus III being your backup quarterback. That's no attempt at Ron Paulus, but there's a reason he didn't have any offers from any Power 5 schools coming out of high school, right? And so it is concerning. It's very concerning. And so at the very least, they need a 2023 quarterback in there, at the very least. But I would say get a 23 and exactly, Ryan. They need a 23 kid and a transfer just because, look, Tyler Buckner could go into this offseason, and if he plays to his potential, he can beat out whoever they bring in. I think he's that talented. but his lack of development is a major concern, and his lack of being healthy is a major concern. Now, if he has a miraculous healing and he comes back and maybe he starts the last 3 games in the bowl game and he rips it up, maybe that takes away a little bit of the perceived need. But even then, I'm still going out and getting a transfer to quarterback to compete with him because I don't know if he's going to get hurt again in the first or second game of the year like he did in high school once and like he did this year. So it's not any kind of knock or me losing faith in Tyler Buchner as a player. I have not lost any faith in Tyler Buchner as a player. I'm concerned about the lack of development because of all the missed seasons, and I'm concerned about the injury history.
Yep.
And you have to protect yourself against that. And if Tyler beats that guy out, great. But if that happens, then you have that guy, Andrew Pine, prepared to go out and back him up, assuming that everybody stays. Josh H91, this is actually really funny, Ryan. I had to bring this one up. If you're UNLV, do you purposely get into 3rd and longs? You're guaranteed to convert or regain 98% of the yards and have a good look at 4th and short. So, like, basically, Josh is advocating for if you're in the 3rd and 5 to get a couple false starts because you're pretty much – I mean, it's funny because it's either you either laugh or cry at that comment because there's a lot of truth to it. And I'm going to just choose to laugh because –
Just get into 3rd and 17 all day and run a draw. You'll be all right.
Yeah, I mean, it's worked. Or a shovel pass. One of the two is going to work for you. So, yeah.
Or a fake draw shovel pass. Let's combine the both. Let's combine them.
Yes.
Love it.
There you go. There you go. Oh, my goodness. Okay. Garland Doxy with the question. Ryan, do y'all think the mask could be the cause for the slow starts? Could that be why BK stopped it on game day? No. That they do the pregame masks for the player walk. It does. No, it doesn't. I don't see any scenario in how that could be why they get false starts and don't complete passes and throw balls into the ground. And I mean, you're over 2 hours away from the mask by the time the game kicks off. Yeah. So am I dismissing it, Garland? No, when you're having the season Notre Dame has, you consider everything, but I don't think that's an issue. I don't think that's an issue at all.
No.
Michael Johnson with a question. Brian and Ryan, could Brandon Hillman play quarterback at Notre Dame, and are we still looking to flip a quarterback? So let's take the first one, Ryan, and answer that one. So I'll let you take a shot at this.
I don't think he's a quarterback for Notre Dame. On certain levels, I think he could be a quarterback, right? Like on certain other programs and certain other levels, I think that he could be a really good quarterback. But I really think, Michael, when I look at Brandon Hillman, the things that pop out for me are the physicality he plays with and the athleticism he brings to the table. So I'd much rather utilize that type of kid as a running back, wide receiver, safety, rover, whatever. Like, I want physicality to be the reason that he is on the field because I think that he brings a load of potential in that department. So I don't want to take away the explosiveness. I don't want to take away the physicality. I honestly just don't think he's a good enough passer to be a full-time quarterback at Notre Dame. I mean, could he be a guy that maybe in this system, 100%. Yes, in this system. But he could play rover for me all day long. He can play running back for me all day long. He's an extremely talented football player. Just don't think he's a quarterback for Notre Dame now.
Agree. I mean, look, there are systems he could play quarterback in.
100%.
But this isn't one of them. And as Ryan said, I want him at a position where he can really maximize his talent. And I think receiver could be that, running back could be that. I like him on defense. And I think that's the thing that I love about him is, you and I think both like him more as like a rover, a safety / rover type.
Rover waiting to happen, man. Yes.
I know a buddy of mine who's a good evaluator, likes him at receiver. Another guy's like, man, he's really dynamic with the ball in his hands. I'd like to see him get a shot at running back. Now, that was before Jeremiah Love committed, right? But the fact that people that I know who I respect their ability to break down film like this kid at different positions than me says a lot about this kid's versatility. And you can't miss on kids like that. And again, he's from the 757, so clearly he's a baller. I mean, that's just a given.
Clearly.
At this point in time. So, but in all seriousness, I do love him on defense. I mean, as a true rover, not as a hybrid linebacker rover, but a true rover of what the rover
doesn't he give you some – doesn't he give you some Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah vibes? Like, doesn't he?
More,
like he just
more quick.
Something about
in here. Yeah. Similar body type, although he's a little bit longer and a little thicker than Jeremiah was at the same age. More quick and explosive than Burner, which is also
Yes.
similar to Jeremiah and can be somewhat limiting on offense, if we're being honest. Similar power when he arrives at the ball, similar range to Jeremiah. Like there's a lot of things that are similar. And he plays with a little bit more discipline than Jeremiah did. Jeremiah was just a pure freelancer. Even in college, it took him until his second year to really get away from that. And so, I think that, man, this kid's a big time sleeper to me. I mean, I grade him out as a 4-star player, right? I mean, this is a good football player. This kid can flat out play.
Yep.
And I'll say that's something I've really liked about this staff. They have shown me the ability to find some sleeper type kids that are now ascending. Like they got in on Brandon Hillman and were talking to him before all the offers started reeling in from Virginia Tech, BC, Tennessee, programs like that. They got in on Tayshawn Lyons. Like they saw him. I mean, we're sitting there
that's
thinking,
what I was
man,
about to say.
You're going to lose Ronan Hannafin. This sucks. And it's like, you know what? Ronan's a higher ranked player for me because of the versatility, but as a pure receiver and the fit in this class, you could argue that Tayshawn Lyons is a better fit for the need in this class than Ronan is, because Ronan's very similar to like Braylon James and Jaden Greathouse. The thing I said about Tayshawn Lyons in an article that I wrote, my midweek musings, I talked about him. I said he has route potential like Rico Flores. He's got take the top off the defense potential like Braylon James, and he's got after the catch potential like Dylan Edwards. The only thing he doesn't have is Jaden Greathouse's size. I mean, he's got a little bit of everybody else to his game, and he's more built like Rico. But, I mean, is that an inaccurate description of his game, which is a better fit for what this class needs than Ronan Hannafin was? And that's not to say that I've changed my opinion of Ronan Hannafin. I haven't. I haven't watched the senior film, but I haven't. It's just about when you're like, man, you lost him, and you end up going to get a kid who's pretty flipping good and maybe even a better complement to what you have. It was my point.
I remember when they first took a look and offered Jeremiah Love too, Brian. Like he was kind of lowly rated on a couple different outlets. Like he was a 3-star at one point.
Consensus 3-star.
Yeah. So they even identified him pretty early comparatively,
which is a big reason why they got him, because they got on him before all those other big schools. I wouldn't say it's the reason, but I would argue it's in the top 5. And I don't even know if he would say that, but it's just that you were able to establish that connection before all those other big time programs got in on them. So yes, they've always done a good job of that with like linemen and tight ends and stuff like that, but they're doing that with skill players. That's a really good sign for this staff's ability. And huge kudos to Chad Bowden for this, because he plays a role in it, but also the staff. Like, the fact that as soon as they lost Ronan, they immediately had Malachi Riley and Tayshawn Lyons to kind of look at and evaluate. They'd already been talking to these kids and all that. They decided rightly on Tayshawn because I think he's a better fit. Because like Malachi Riley to me is a good player, but he's like a not as good version of Rico Flores. You've already got a kid like that who's better than him.
Agree.
Tayshawn brings that really nice complementary skill set. And as you see, he's just climbing up the national rankings. I mean, On3's got him as a borderline top 100 kid now. And I would hope that the others would kind of come through on that one as well. All right, next question. Good question, Michael. Oh, and then are we still looking to flip a quarterback? Yes, they are.
Yes.
I'm going to have an article coming out this week. So we've been asked to keep the names of the specific guys they're going after quiet. Some of them, like everybody knows they're going after Avery Johnson. But I'm going to come out with a list of quarterbacks that I think that they should go after. Some of them are guys that they are after. Some of them are guys I think they should go after. And so we'll have that this week. But yes, they are definitely still trying to flip a quarterback. Will they be able to flip one? I don't know. I really don't. Kenny Minchie's not going to happen. That one's not going to happen. That one's over with. He just not interested. I think they waited too late. And then how they handled quarterback recruiting, where like they made it so publicly obvious that like they wanted Austin Novosad. I think Kenny Minchie's like, okay, you wanted Dante Moore over me. I told you I was interested, and then you go make this public push for Austin Novosad, which I mean, I kind of understand because he was going to make a decision sooner. But, the way they handled it, I think you kind of ruined any chance to get Kenny Minchie. The way that they've recruited quarterbacks in recent years is just mind-boggling. How bad they've just screwed so many of these recruitments up. It's just –
Well, I'm sure we'll have some intel on the board if this cycle ends terribly for quarterback recruiting. But
no, we will. There's no doubt about that. Tyler Binge, Brian and Ryan, and the chat, your number one Heisman winner that performed the worst in the NFL.
Ooh.
I mean,
number one Heisman winner.
There's been a lot of NFL guys that didn't perform well in the NFL. As far as my lifetime,
Yeah.
I mean, Danny Warfel was pretty bad in the NFL, but I don't know if I ever expected him to not be bad in the NFL. I don't think that was ever kind of a thing. Trying to
Did
think,
Trent
like,
Richardson? Did Trent Richardson win the Heisman?
he did not.
He
No.
did not. He did not win the
Nope,
Heisman.
he did not. So, like,
No.
here's sort of the Heisman. Okay, here's one.
Yeah.
I got one for
Yeah.
you.
Mhm.
Gino Torretta.
He won it over Marshall Faulk that year. What a joke that was.
Yes,
Yeah.
that Marshall Faulk and Garrison Hurst.
Yes.
So yes, he is in the College Football Hall of Fame, which I think I just think is nuts.
My dad agrees with you on that one.
Yes, like nuts. But he won it. Here was the top 5. Here was the top 6 that year, and I think they all should have got it. Well, top 5 should have all got it over him. Marshall Faulk.
Mhm.
So Gino Torretta passed for 3,000 yards, barely completed 50% of his passes, 19 touchdowns, 7 interceptions on a really good Miami team. Marshall Faulk rushed for 1,630 yards, 15 touchdowns. Garrison Hurst rushed for 1,547 yards and 19 touchdowns that year. Marshall Faulk also that season in 92 had 128 receiving yards. Marshall Faulk got screwed out of the Heisman twice, by the way.
Yes, he did.
With all due respect to Charlie Ward the next year, the fact that Marshall Faulk, here's Marshall Faulk's the numbers in 93. In 93, Marshall Faulk rushed for 1,530 yards, 21 touchdowns, caught 47 passes for 644 yards and 3 more touchdowns, and he finished 4th in the Heisman Trophy voting behind flipping Heath Schuler and David Palmer from Alabama. Heath freaking Schuler, who passed for 2,300 yards that year. So I am okay with Charlie Ward getting it. Charlie was really good that year, although he didn't play great in the biggest game they played all year. But 92, and then number 4 was Marvin Jones, and then number 5 was Reggie Brooks. I'd have given it to Reggie Brooks over Gino Torretta. That was a joke. That was an absolute joke.
Do you know Marshall Faulk almost went to USC, but they wanted him to play defensive back at USC. They didn't want him to play running back. So
kind of like Notre Dame and Ezekiel Elliott. He liked Notre Dame a lot, but they want him to play defensive back.
Here's my answer.
2011
Heisman Trophy winner. I thought Robert Griffin III, excuse me, was going to be really good in the NFL. I did. I really did.
And after his rookie, until the knee injury. He
Yep.
really was until the knee injury. But Gino Torretta was bad. Danny Warfel was bad. But he was just, Ron Dane was a big disappointment for me. I thought he was.
Yes, he was. He's a New Jersey guy too.
Good. Yeah, Chris Winkie wasn't very good. I mean, Eric Crouch didn't even really play in the NFL. Jason White, I don't think he really played in the NFL.
No.
So I mean, Tim Tebow wasn't great, but he had a playoff win. Since then, Johnny Manziel, that didn't surprise. I didn't expect him to be good in the NFL. Marcus Mariota's been okay, but yeah, I think as you look back on it, I'd have to go with Gino Torretta. He was pretty bad.
I remember
when he should have won it though. But yes.
I remember when the Rams drafted Eric Crouch to play wide receiver. They drafted him, and then right after they drafted him, he said, "I'm not playing wide receiver in the NFL." And it's like, all right, well, I guess you're not playing in the NFL then.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like, okay, dude, whatever. Gino Torretta in his NFL career went 5 of 16 for 41 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. That's it. That's not surprising, but that guy had no business winning the Heisman Trophy.
I remember
go ahead, Ryan.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I remember Jason White got drafted in like the 6th or 7th round by the Titans, I think, and then never played at all. Like,
right. And you knew he wasn't going to play. So, like, I guess I don't even really consider him like a performing the worst because he never really played. Gino was bad. And Danny Warfel only really played for Spurrier when he took over the Redskins. That was really the only time he really played. What a train wreck that was.
Warfel and Patrick Ramsey was the quarterback too, and it was just it was bad. It was bad.
Like I thought that Rocket should have got it over Ty Detmer in 1990, but I kind of understood why Ty got it. I mean, threw for over 5,000 yards, but why not give it to David Klingler, who also threw for over 5,000 yards, but had 13 more touchdowns than Ty Detmer and 8 fewer interceptions. Ty Detmer won the Heisman Trophy, throwing 28 interceptions. 28 interceptions. That's bad. Even then, that's bad. And it's just like, come on, guys, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? This is a joke. But whatever. whatever. Anyway, all right, let's get to some more questions here so we can wrap up here. USMA, what teams are the biggest surprises this year? Teams we thought would be bad and aren't. Teams we thought will be good but aren't. Well, I mean, obviously Notre Dame's kind of got to be in that conversation.
Yeah. Easy one for me, Brian.
Go ahead,
Easy
Ryan.
one for me. I thought Illinois would be okay this year, but Illinois is good, man. Like, they're good. I watched their defense the other day. They're giving up 8 points a game. They have surrendered 2 touchdown passes and intercepted 12 passes and letting up less than 3 yards a carry. Illinois has been a big surprise for me this year, man. They are a good team, a good football team.
We had said we did a Big Ten, Sean Davis and I did a Big Ten preview, and we said that there's potentially 5 teams in the West that could win the West. We even went down as far as Illinois. Now we said, look, Illinois' biggest question marks, but that speaking of that, I really thought Scott Frost was going to actually win somewhat at Nebraska this year. I really did. I thought with the way that they finished last year, with how competitive they were, I was like, no, he's gonna do some good things. He's going to do some good things. And they've been a absolute train wreck. There's been a lot of teams, Ryan, that I thought were going to be decent this year that aren't. And there's some teams that my sleeper team this year was Tennessee, if you remember. I really thought Tennessee was going to have a breakout. So far they have. I mean, again, we're only halfway through the year. But I did not expect TCU to be this good or Kansas.
Yeah.
I didn't expect either one of those teams to be this good. I didn't think Oklahoma was going to be as – I ripped people for making Oklahoma a top 10 team. I didn't think it'd be this bad.
Right.
But BC I thought was going to be a lot better than they are. They're bad. I mean, they're really bad. I thought Miami would be better than they are, but I'm curious to see if Miami going on the road and beating Virginia Tech can go on a run, because I predict them to go 9-3. That's still there for them. I think their schedule is favorable for that potential. I mean, I think probably have like one upset to win. I think they play at Clemson, but they play home against Duke, at Virginia, home against Florida State, at Georgia Tech, all very winnable games for them. And then the last game of the year, they're home against Pitt. Those are all very winnable games for Miami. It's just that it's the at Clemson game is going to be tough for them to get to 9-3, but certainly capable of rallying down the stretch. Trying to think, I didn't expect Baylor to be that good this year. Go ahead.
Here's another one. This is more just one side of the ball. I cannot believe how bad Virginia is offensively. Just can't believe it, man. Like I wasn't a big Tony Elliott guy at all, and I'm still not a Tony Elliott guy, but I did not think that he would single-handedly destroy that offense like he's done, man. Like, it is so bad.
I did,
because
I watched what he did at Clemson
like this
last
bad?
year. Yeah. Did you watch Clemson last year? Yeah, I thought it'd be this bad.
But man, that's crazy.
Because I never thought Brendan Armstrong was that good of a quarterback. I thought they really used him well, and he had really good weapons. But no, I'm not shocked that they're as bad as they are. And they lost their only good offensive lineman, too. He transferred to Michigan. A team that's been a lot better than I thought is Purdue. I thought they'd finish second to last in that division because of all the losses they had. And they're not only 5-2, they're 2 plays away from being 7-0 right now.
I know.
They choked away the Penn State game at the end, and then Syracuse beat them at the end of the game too. They're not very far from being a really good football team at all. Ryan, you know that I thought UCLA had a chance to be really good this year. You know that. I've been riding that UCLA train for a while. I thought Washington would somewhat bounce back. There's nobody really in the Pac-12 that's not good that I thought was going to be good. SEC, everybody's pretty much about where I thought they would be. Arkansas is not as good as I thought they'd be, but not by much. I thought they'd be 5-2 right now. They're 4-3, not by much. I didn't think A&M was going to be very good. They're not. Everybody else is kind of on par based on their schedule of where I thought they would be. There aren't a lot of teams that have been way better than I thought, other than, like I said, Purdue. Is there anybody else that's been better, like way better than you thought that they would be this year? USC's a little better than I thought, but the schedule hasn't really been as hard as I thought it would be either. But they battled against Utah. I mean, they were competitive in that game. They played it to the wire.
I think you were a little higher on this team than I was, but I think Minnesota, for the most part, has been a little better than I thought. Like, I mean, I think they're just 4-2 now, but like they've still been better.
They've disappointed me. It's because I thought they'd have a shot. The thing I said about them is I picked them to finish like 3rd or 4th in the West, but because their schedule's so hard.
Yeah.
But losing at home to Purdue was a bad loss. Really bad loss. And
Well,
of
they're going
course,
to
they
get
did it without
big
Ibrahim.
upset this
so-
week, though. Big upset
There we
this
go.
weekend. So
There we go. And this team is exactly where I thought they'd be. But I'm gonna tell you, I really like what Joey McGuire is doing at Texas Tech. They're 3-3, which is about where I thought they'd be right now. But this is not Mike Leach's Texas Tech. This is a team that plays hard. They're well coached. They just don't have the players right now. I'm telling you, they're a team that we'll look out for in the Big 12 moving forward. I really like what Joey McGuire is doing there, and he's going to recruit well in state because he's tied into all those schools. So really like the job he's doing there. And Baylor, I expected Baylor to not be very good this year, but they're actually a little better than I thought they'd be, to be honest with you.
I agree with that one.
They compete. They're a very well coached football team. Their record's about where I thought their record be. But yeah, and then some of the teams that are surprises. Remember preseason, I said North Carolina's going to be a lot better than people thought. I thought that they would be because I didn't think it because of Drake May. I honestly did not expect that. I actually thought Jacoby Criswell would be the guy at quarterback, but Drake May's been great. But I just thought Carolina was going to have a bounce back year this year, and we'll see how they can finish. Here's one that's really good that I think is being good. Syracuse. I didn't think Syracuse was going to be this good because I didn't think Garrett Schrader was going to be able to play the way he's played. That's one. That's definitely one that's better than I thought they were going to be, for sure. I'm sure we all had Tulane at 6-1 right now, right, Ryan?
100%, yeah. Willie Fritz, baby, fight Willie Fritz.
Doing a great job, man.
He is, really is. The one team that I thought was going to be, I thought they were going to take a little bit of a down trot, but I didn't think it would be this bad. Is Michigan State looks just awful, man. So far,
yeah, I'm not surprised by it. It was smoke and mirrors.
I thought they were going to take a step back, but like this year's
smoke and mirrors last year. Smoke and mirrors, and then they lost 2 of the 3 guys that were the primary drivers of that success in Walker, and then the receiver that left too. So was it Nailon's the one that left last year, right? Or
Naylor, Speedy Naylor.
He's the one that left, right?
Yes.
Jonathan Gabrick with a question here as we wind down. He says, "What does Notre Dame do Friday before the game? Do they stay in a hotel or do they all stay wherever they live? They stay in a hotel. They have family over, and I mean it's similar to routine to what they did last year. I mean, I don't really think it's that, honestly. I think it's more about just the preparation. I really think that's a big part of it, and yeah, I don't know that they're doing really anything different. They get a hotel, they see the family, that kind of thing, which is something they should do. I mean, you should be able to see your family when they come in town. Yep. Robert Bishop asks, is Jackson Arnold flippable? My OU coworkers say he's locked in there, but do acknowledge Notre Dame has tried to pursue him lately. Notre Dame has tried to pursue him for a while. They were trying to, under the radar, get him to visit for the Clemson game. Once that got reported, however, it almost all but eliminated any chance that was going to happen. And that's why they were hoping to keep it under wraps. And some people just decided it was better to break the news, including it really came from. I've heard people say, like, criticize Tom Loy for this one. I wouldn't, because Tom, I don't know this for a fact, but I feel like Tom was compelled to talk about it because that troll Twitter account talked about it. So everybody kept asking about it. So then it's like, well, it's being talked about, so let's go report it. So it wasn't Tom that put that out there. It was some random site that took it from people. So, that's just not a lot you can do.
How many times has the media sabotaged Notre Dame recruiting this season so far, Brian? It's been bad, man.
Yep. Yeah, it is. It is. Anthony Solomon, I did not see it yet. I will be going to see that here soon because there's a couple other things that I've heard that I want to check in on that as well. But yes, I did see that. So, and you know what? Another team that Bama is exactly what I thought they would be this year. They're a talented team that doesn't have the coaching to maximize their talent like that in the past. And I'm going to say it again, and people are going to laugh at me, but I'm going to say it again. I'm going to stick with my prediction that I had a couple weeks ago. Bama will lose 2 regular season games this year. I'm going to stick with that. And they lost at Tennessee. They play home against Mississippi State, at LSU, at Ole Miss, home against Auburn. I just think they're going to drop one of those games. I just do. I just hope it's not the LSU game. It sucks so bad. Not going to lie. Tommy Guns has a very important question, Ryan. Have you seen Top Gun yet? I'm afraid I know the answer to this, and I'm going to be very upset.
Tommy, I've been working very hard, man. So I failed to disappoint you all again, but I have not seen Top Gun Maverick yet.
Unbelievable. You're so un-American. So disappointed.
That's an American
Joe, yes, exactly right. Absolutely right. Joel Easton says, "What are your opinions?" I'm totally kidding. What are your opinions on whether Coach Reese should be on the sideline? Does this matter to players? Maybe related. Does not having the analyst position filled change where Coach Reese is? Number one, it doesn't. If anything, Tommy Reese is a bit of a hothead. I don't think you want that on the sideline just during the game. I think you want to let him scream and yell up in the press box when no one can hear him. It's probably best. And that's not an insult to Tom Reese. It's just knowing your personnel. I don't, he's a fiery dude, right? And that's not a criticism. There's nothing. I mean, we knew that. There's nothing wrong with that. He was that way last year when we praised him. I just don't know if that's where you want him. I also think as an offensive coordinator, or a defensive coordinator, you got to be where you're comfortable. When I was like pass game coordinator and served some of those coordinating roles, I preferred to be up top. When I was a running backs coach and a tight ends coach, I wanted to be down in the field. It just depends on who you're coaching and what your responsibilities are. If I was an offensive coordinator right now, I'd be up in the box. I just think it's better. You can chart. You've got all your stuff in front of you. And that's not true for everybody. Some people like being down on the field. I mean, a lot of the air raid guys are down on the field. Phil Longo's down on the field. Lincoln Riley was down on the field, I believe, when he was at Oklahoma, correct? Before he took over as head coach. He was down the field. So it just depends. Depends on there's defensive coordinators that are up top. I mean, Al Golden's on the field. Marcus Freeman was on the field. Clark Lee was up top. Mike Elko was up top. There's no right or wrong way. It's just what you're comfortable with. The only way it can be right or wrong is if you're not putting people in other positions to help complement where you are. So if you're up in the booth and you don't have someone on the field that can communicate what you need to communicate, then that's a problem. But you being on the field doesn't necessarily fix that because, that may not be where you're best. So I know that people are looking for that. And it's like, they are not playing well because they choose to take the ball first. And there's all that stuff. I don't think that stuff matters, right? It's about where there's no right or wrong way to do that. As long as you've got the operation figured out and it's working, and then, that's all that matters to me. Is that something that you lose sleep over, Ryan? Is wherever the coordinator is or anything like that? And I don't think I think Joel's just trying to figure out. We're trying to find answers. You know what I mean? And but seriously, I mean, is that something? I mean, some people care about that kind of stuff. I just don't.
Yeah, I always like being up in the box. I think you see everything a lot better. But I mean, wherever a guy feels they're most successful is fine with me. Like it's a very individualistic type of thing, So yeah.
And then as far as the analyst position, I doubt it. I doubt it would change where Reese is, honestly. And I don't know how Notre Dame, like Marcus Freeman talked about that today, and he said they just haven't found the right fit. I think that's absurd. I got it. I don't want to say too much about it, but anyway, that's just nuts to me. Absolutely nuts to me. Anyway, I think that is going to do it, Ryan, for today's show. And a lot of really good questions there, everybody. And a lot of good discussion in the chat as well. So that's going to do it for Ryan today's show. That's going to do it for the mailbag. I would ask everybody to know I'm not going to fire Ryan because he didn't watch Top Gun. I am going to contemplate rewriting his contract, however. So we will have to discuss that as well. Anyway, so that is going to do it for today's show, everybody. Thanks so much. One more IB Nation Sports Talk show tonight at 6 o'clock. It'll be Sean Stiers and Jesse Stiers talking tonight. They will also talk more about Coach Freeman's press conference today. Ryan and I will be back tomorrow we will do Keys to the Victory and our predictions in one show. Then we will also preview the upcoming games. And then, of course, Saturday, 10 a.m. to noon Eastern, you will have the guys doing the IB Nation, IB countdown to kickoff. And then, of course, we'll have our post-game show here live as well. So be ready for all of that. Make sure you hit that like button, everybody. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell. Share this podcast. Please sign up for the message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Give us a 5-star review if you're listening via podcast. We would greatly appreciate that. And, of course, check out all the cool stuff we have down below. We've got Built Bar, 10% discount. You obviously have the merch store, all types of cool stuff. If you have not signed up for the message board and you'd like some merch, wait to buy merch till after you sign up for the message board. Because if you sign up for a monthly membership, you get 10% off your entire purchase. If you sign up for an annual membership, you get 25% off your entire purchase into the merch store. So definitely take advantage of that. For Ryan, I'm Brian. Have a great day, everybody. And thank you so much for listening to the Irish Breakdown Podcast.